Satoshi Nakamoto, the greatest mystery of the 21st century. Prologue. A thunderclap in the darkest night of the financial crisis. Imagine standing in the heart of Manhattan during the final months of 2008. The skyline above Wall Street is gray, heavy, and strangely silent. Inside glass towers that once symbolized unlimited prosperity, executives stare at computer screens in disbelief. Traders who only weeks earlier believed they controlled the world's financial destiny now watch fortunes evaporate by the second. Then the impossible happens. Lehman Brothers, a financial institution that had survived wars, depressions, political revolutions, and nearly a century and a half of modern history, collapses. 158 years. Gone. Within weeks, trillions of dollars disappear from global markets. Entire retirement funds are wiped out. Businesses close overnight. Millions of people lose their jobs. Millions more receive letters informing them that the homes they had spent decades paying for no longer belong to them. Across America, families begin placing their lives into cardboard boxes. Children ask why they have to leave their bedrooms. Parents have no answers. For the first time in generations, ordinary people begin asking a terrifying question. What if the system itself cannot be trusted? Banks had promised security, governments had promised stability, central banks had promised control. Yet the entire financial architecture, the invisible machine upon which modern civilization depended, had revealed itself to be astonishingly fragile. A castle built not on stone, but on confidence. And confidence had vanished. History often remembers great explosions. The assassination in Sarajevo, Pearl Harbor, the fall of the Berlin Wall, September 11. Moments when the world changes in an instant. But some revolutions begin almost silently. No smoke, no fire, no marching armies. Only an idea, only a document, only a message sent across the internet while nearly everyone else is looking somewhere else. As newspapers fill their front pages with headlines about bankruptcies, bailouts, and economic catastrophe, someone, somewhere, is preparing to detonate an entirely different kind of bomb. Not one capable of destroying buildings, one capable of challenging the very foundations upon which global finance has stood for centuries. Then comes Halloween, October 31st, 2008, while children walk neighborhoods wearing masks, while carved pumpkins glow beneath front porches, while most of the world searches for temporary distractions from an unfolding financial nightmare. An email quietly arrives in the inboxes of a small mailing list devoted to cryptography. It contains no dramatic language, no promises, no political manifesto, no marketing campaign. The sender signs with a name no one has ever heard before: Satoshi Nakamoto. The subject line is almost painfully ordinary. Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, attached as a PDF, 9 pages, nothing more. No colorful graphics, no emotional appeals, no predictions about changing the world, only mathematics, computer science, cryptography, game theory, algorithms. To almost everyone who would eventually hear the name Bitcoin, those 9 pages would appear impossibly dry. Yet hidden inside them was a solution to a problem that had haunted computer scientists, mathematicians, economists, and cryptographers for decades. How can two complete strangers exchange money across the internet without trusting each other? Without trusting a bank, without trusting a government, without trusting any company or any intermediary at all? For generations, nearly everyone believed such a system was impossible. Money, after all, required trust. Someone had to keep the ledger. Someone had to verify transactions. Someone had to stop cheating. Someone had to prevent the same digital coin from being spent twice. That someone had always been an institution, a bank, a government, a central authority. Satoshi proposed something almost unthinkable. What if no one became the authority? What if mathematics itself could replace trust? What if thousands of strangers, none of whom trusted one another, could collectively verify every transaction without any ruler standing above them? It sounded absurd, almost utopian. To many readers on that mailing list, Bitcoin appeared to be another fascinating experiment destined to join the graveyard of failed digital currencies. After all, they had seen similar dreams before. Electronic cash, digital money, anonymous payments, each brilliant, each elegant, each ultimately defeated by the same unforgiving reality. Sooner or later, every system required someone in charge, someone who could be corrupted, someone who could disappear, someone who could fail. Why should this one be different? Very few people paid attention. There were no newspaper headlines, no television interviews, no venture capital investors, no government investigations, no cheering crowds. Bitcoin entered the world almost unnoticed. History has a strange sense of humor. Some of humanity's greatest revolutions begin with applause. Others begin in complete silence. 18 years have passed since that Halloween night. The forgotten experiment has become one of the most valuable financial assets ever created. Its market value has reached levels measured in trillions of dollars. The world's largest investment firms now compete to offer Bitcoin products. Governments debate whether to regulate it, ban it, or adopt it. Some nations have recognized it as legal tender. Others see it as a threat to monetary sovereignty. Presidents speak about it. Central bankers fear it. Economists argue endlessly over it. Wall Street, which once ignored it completely, now tracks its every movement. A technology once dismissed as a toy for eccentric programmers has become impossible to ignore. Yet beneath every chart, every headline, every political argument, there remains one question, a question that has grown larger with every passing year. Who is Satoshi Nakamoto? Think about the magnitude of that mystery. We live in an age where nearly every digital footprint survives forever. Every search, every message, every photograph, every location, every online purchase, entire industries exist solely to collect, analyze, and monetize our identities. Governments possess surveillance capabilities once imaginable only in science fiction. Intelligence agencies can reconstruct astonishing details about ordinary lives. Corporations know what people buy before their families do. Yet somehow, the creator of one of the most influential inventions of the modern era simply vanished. No verified photograph, no confirmed voice recording, no authenticated video, no reliable home address, no proven identity, no definitive birthplace, no certainty regarding age, no certainty regarding gender. Perhaps not even certainty that Satoshi Nakamoto was a single person. The name itself may be nothing more than a carefully designed mask. Even more astonishing, the digital wallet believed to belong to Satoshi contains one of the largest untouched fortunes in modern history. Billions upon billions of dollars. Enough wealth to rival kings, industrial dynasties, and some of the richest entrepreneurs on Earth. Yet those coins remain almost perfectly still, year after year. Market cycle after market cycle, bull markets, bear markets, global pandemics, political upheavals, nothing, no spending, no celebration, no public claim, no return. Imagine possessing unimaginable wealth and choosing never to touch it. Why? Was it discipline, fear, principle, or necessity? Did Satoshi disappear to protect a revolutionary invention from becoming dependent upon its creator? Did someone force that disappearance? Did the creator die? Or has the greatest deception of the digital age convinced the world to search for an individual when the truth may be something far larger? This audiobook is not a technical manual about blockchain. It is not a trading guide. It is not a collection of investment strategies. Instead, it is an investigation. Well, together, we will reopen forgotten email archives. We will examine timestamps that few people noticed. We will analyze writing styles, linguistic fingerprints, coding habits, and historical coincidences. We will follow trails hidden across obscure internet forums, cryptography mailing lists, abandoned software repositories, and long-forgotten conversations that may contain clues overlooked for nearly 2 decades. Along the way, we will enter a remarkable underground world populated by brilliant programmers, eccentric mathematicians, privacy activists, cypherpunks, visionaries, and extraordinary imposters. Some genuinely sought to reinvent money. Others sought only fame. A few may have known far more than they ever admitted. One by one, we will open the case files of history's most compelling suspects. A quiet neighbor whose life took an unexpected and tragic turn. A reclusive academic who insists he is not the creator. A legendary cryptographer whose ideas shaped Bitcoin long before it existed. Visionaries who disappeared. Engineers who denied everything. Billionaires. Idealists. And even the unsettling possibility that Satoshi Nakamoto was never a lone genius at all, but the product of something much larger. Could intelligence agencies have played a role? Could multiple people have written under one identity? Could the greatest financial innovation of the century have emerged from collaboration hidden in plain sight? Or is the simplest explanation still the correct one? As every detective eventually discovers, The truth rarely announces itself. It hides inside contradictions, inside forgotten details, inside questions no one thinks to ask. Some mysteries are solved by discovering new evidence. Others are solved by seeing old evidence differently. Our journey begins where all great investigations begin, with a single document, 9 pages, 1 pseudonym, and a question that has refused to die. Who is Satoshi Nakamoto? Turn down the lights, put on your headphones, leave your assumptions behind. The hunt for the greatest hidden identity of the 21st century begins now. Chapter 1. The Rebellion of the Cipher Knights. Every great mystery begins long before the crime. Every revolution begins long before the first shot is fired, and every legend has ancestors whose names history almost forgot. If we are going to uncover the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto, we must resist the temptation to begin with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not the beginning. It is the final page of a much older story. Imagine entering an abandoned library beneath the modern internet. Dust covers forgotten shelves, ancient mailing lists flicker like candlelight, obscure research papers lie buried beneath decades of digital silence. Everywhere you look are fragments of unfinished dreams, blueprints for inventions that never changed the world. At first glance, they appear unrelated. One paper discusses anonymous communication, another proposes digital cash, a third describes cryptographic puzzles, a fourth warns about government surveillance. Separate ideas, separate authors, separate decades. But what if they were never separate at all? What if Bitcoin was not a miracle, but a mosaic? That is our first clue. The fingerprints surrounding Bitcoin belong to many people, yet somehow only one pair of hands assembled the entire puzzle. Those hands belonged, or appeared to belong, to someone calling themselves Satoshi Nakamoto. But before Satoshi, there were the Cypherpunks. The name sounds almost fictional, like a secret society hidden inside a science fiction novel. In reality, they were something stranger. They were mathematicians, programmers, cryptographers, computer scientists, engineers, idealists, people who believed that the greatest battles of the 21st century would not be fought with tanks or missiles. They would be fought with algorithms. To most people, encryption is simply something that protects passwords. To the cypherpunks, encryption was something far greater. It was freedom itself. They believed governments would inevitably seek greater surveillance. Corporations would inevitably collect more personal information. Financial institutions would inevitably accumulate more power over ordinary citizens. History, in their view, pointed in only one direction: towards centralized control. They had no intention of stopping that trend through elections, nor through protests, nor through violence. Their weapon was mathematics. One of the movement's most famous beliefs could be summarized in a simple principle. Privacy is not granted by governments. Privacy is built with code. That sentence explains almost everything that followed. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, these programmers quietly developed tools that allowed strangers to communicate securely across the internet. Anonymous email, digital signatures, public key cryptography, encryption protocols. Each invention looked technical. Each was, in reality, profoundly political, not political in the traditional sense. Rather, they challenged a deeper question: who ultimately controls information? Governments, corporations, or individuals themselves? Their discussions unfolded in obscure mailing lists rather than university lecture halls. There were no television cameras, no campaign speeches, no celebrities, only endless debates filled with equations, source code, and philosophical arguments that stretched late into the night. Many outsiders dismissed them as eccentric dreamers. History has often been unkind to dreamers, until suddenly their ideas become indispensable. As investigators, however, we must avoid romanticizing the movement. The cypherpunks were brilliant. They were also remarkably unsuccessful. Their greatest ambition was digital cash, money that existed only on computers, money no government could freeze, money no bank could censor, money that respected privacy as naturally as physical cash. It sounded revolutionary, yet every attempt collapsed. Our first cold case takes us to the late 20th century. Its name was DigiCash. The inventor was a brilliant cryptographer who genuinely believed he had solved the future of money. The technology was elegant. Transactions could protect user privacy far better than conventional banking systems. Many experts admired the design. Banks showed interest. Investors became optimistic. For a brief moment, it seemed digital cash had arrived. Then everything unraveled. Not because the mathematics failed, because the architecture did. DigiCash depended upon a central company. A single organization issued the currency. A single organization verified transactions. A single organization represented the heart of the system. And history has taught one lesson repeatedly. Anything with a heart can stop beating. When the company struggled financially, the entire project collapsed alongside it. The technology had not been defeated by hackers. It had been defeated by dependence. Our second case file bears an intriguing title, B-Money. Even today, the name feels strangely familiar. Its anonymous creator imagined a world where participants collectively maintained financial records without traditional institutions. Reading the proposal now feels almost eerie. Certain ideas resemble Bitcoin with astonishing accuracy. Distributed accounting, digital identities, cryptographic verification, concepts that would later become fundamental. Yet something essential remained missing: trust. How could thousands of strangers agree upon one shared financial history if dishonest participants tried to cheat? How could the network prevent conflicting versions of reality? The proposal offered remarkable insight, but not a complete solution. The investigation continues. Another folder waits beneath decades of digital dust. Its title reads, BitGold. Even the name sounds prophetic. Digital scarcity, computational work, cryptographic puzzles creating valuable assets. The similarities to Bitcoin become impossible to ignore. Some researchers have called BitGold Bitcoin's closest ancestor. That comparison is understandable. Its creator understood something profound. Gold possesses value partly because it is difficult to obtain. Perhaps digital money should require effort as well. Computers could perform complex calculations. That computational work could create scarce digital objects. A brilliant concept. But once again, the same obstacle appeared. Who keeps the official ledger? Who decides ownership? Who resolves disputes? Who prevents conflicting histories? Every path eventually returned to the same impossible wall. Trust, again and again and again. This recurring failure forms one of the most important clues in our investigation. The pioneers were not lacking intelligence. Far from it. Many ranked among the finest cryptographers of their generation. If they failed repeatedly, perhaps the problem itself was extraordinarily difficult. Which raises another question. How did Satoshi succeed where so many exceptional minds had not? The popular myth imagines a lone genius descending from nowhere. One mysterious individual appears, writes 9 pages, invents Bitcoin, disappears. It is an elegant story. It is also misleading. Great detectives distrust elegant stories. Reality is usually more complicated. The deeper we examine Bitcoin's origins, the more it resembles an architectural masterpiece built from recycled stone. Every block had existed somewhere before. Proof of work, digital signatures, hash functions, distributed networking, timestamping, peer-to-peer communication, economic incentives. None originated with Satoshi. Each belonged to earlier thinkers, earlier experiments, earlier failures. The miracle was not invention. The miracle was integration. Imagine standing inside the ruins of an ancient city after an earthquake. Broken columns lie scattered across the ground, fragments of temples, pieces of bridges, collapsed towers. Most visitors see destruction. An architect sees building materials. That is how Satoshi begins to emerge from the evidence, not as a magician, not as an inventor of everything, but as an extraordinary architect. Where others saw disconnected failures, Satoshi recognized compatible components. One abandoned idea solved another project's weakness. One forgotten algorithm complemented another. One economic insight balanced one technical limitation. Individually, none were sufficient. Together, they formed something no one had previously assembled. History rewards originality, but history often misunderstands where originality truly resides. Leonardo da Vinci did not invent anatomy. Newton did not invent gravity. The Wright brothers did not invent wings. Innovation frequently comes from combining existing knowledge in ways no one else imagined. Bitcoin appears to follow that same pattern. As we examine Satoshi's writings, another curious characteristic emerges. There is remarkably little ego, no declarations of personal genius, no lengthy explanations about changing civilization, no claims of being history's greatest programmer. Instead, Satoshi constantly referenced earlier work, acknowledged previous researchers, discussed existing proposals, improved rather than dismissed. That humility itself becomes evidence. Whoever wrote the Bitcoin white paper possessed deep familiarity with decades of cryptographic history, not superficial familiarity, professional familiarity, the kind acquired only through years of careful study. Our suspect, therefore, narrows slightly, not by name, but by profile. This was someone who understood the failures of DigiCash, someone who had read B-Money carefully, someone who appreciated BitGold, someone who followed cypherpunk debates closely enough to recognize precisely where every previous attempt had broken apart. That realization changes everything. Perhaps we have been asking the wrong question. Instead of asking, who invented Bitcoin, perhaps we should ask, who knew enough about every previous failure to build the first successful version? That is a very different investigation, and it points toward a very different kind of suspect, not merely a brilliant programmer, but a patient historian of cryptography, an observer who spent years collecting broken pieces while everyone else searched for entirely new ones. The trail has only begun. The names hidden inside forgotten mailing lists will soon become more familiar. The debates will grow more intense, the clues more subtle, the suspects more compelling. Because somewhere within this forgotten brotherhood of mathematicians, privacy activists, and cryptographic rebels, someone learned how to transform decades of failure into one of the most influential inventions in modern history. Whether that someone was a lone architect or an entire team hiding behind a single name remains one of the greatest unanswered questions of our age. And our investigation has only just begun. Chapter 2. Inside the eye of the 2008 financial storm. Every detective knows that a crime scene tells two stories. The first is the story everyone sees. The second is the story someone desperately hoped would remain invisible. To understand Bitcoin, we must return to the greatest financial crime scene of the 21st century. Not because Bitcoin was born there, but because that catastrophe revealed the motive. When historians speak about the financial crisis of 2008, they often describe collapsing banks, frozen credit markets, and plunging stock prices. Those are facts. But facts alone rarely explain revolutions. Imagine walking through New York during those desperate autumn weeks. Outside the skyscrapers of Lower Manhattan, ordinary commuters continue rushing to work. Coffee shops still open every morning. Traffic still fills the streets. The city appears almost normal. Inside the financial district, however, another reality is unfolding. Computer screens flash red, phones ring without pause, executives whisper in conference rooms with the blinds closed, entire fortunes disappear between sunrise and sunset. Institutions once considered too large to fail suddenly discover that size offers no protection against panic. For decades, Wall Street had sold certainty, sophisticated risk models, brilliant financial engineering, markets that supposedly regulated themselves, complex derivatives capable of distributing danger so efficiently that catastrophic failure appeared almost impossible. Then reality intervened. Mortgage-backed securities, once praised as masterpieces of modern finance, became radioactive assets. Banks no longer trusted one another. Credit, the invisible bloodstream of the global economy, began to clot. Without credit, businesses stopped breathing. The collapse of Lehman Brothers became the symbol, but it was never the entire story. Behind closed doors, governments faced an impossible decision: allow enormous financial institutions to collapse or rescue them with public money. Neither choice seemed just. Neither choice seemed safe. One path threatened economic depression. The other threatened something less visible: the collapse of public trust. Across America and Europe, governments chose intervention. Hundreds of billions of dollars, soon followed by trillions, flowed into failing institutions. Emergency loans, guarantees, capital injections, liquidity facilities. Entire programs appeared almost overnight. Officials argued they had no alternative. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps they were wrong. History still debates the decision, but ordinary citizens saw something much simpler. When families lost their homes, they received eviction notices. When workers lost their jobs, they received unemployment forms. When small businesses failed, they disappeared. When giant banks failed, they received rescue packages. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Losses, many concluded, had become social. Profits remained private. That perception changed everything. For generations, banks had asked society for trust. Now society began asking an uncomfortable question: Who exactly serves whom? Does the financial system exist to protect citizens, or do citizens exist to rescue the financial system? It is impossible to know whether Satoshi Nakamoto watched these events from New York, London, Tokyo, or somewhere else entirely. We do not know the country. We do not know the time zone. We do not even know whether Satoshi was one person. Yet the historical timing is too precise to dismiss as coincidence. Only weeks after global confidence reached its lowest point, Bitcoin appeared. This brings us to one of the most important pieces of evidence in our investigation. Not hidden inside emails, not concealed within source code, but engraved forever into Bitcoin's very first block. Detectives treasure evidence that cannot be altered. The Genesis block is exactly that, the first block of the Bitcoin blockchain, the foundation upon which every subsequent block would rest. Unlike ordinary documents, it cannot quietly disappear into an archive. It exists permanently. Inside that first block lies a sentence, only a newspaper headline, nothing more. Yet perhaps no sentence in the history of digital money has inspired more analysis. It reads, "The Times 03 Jan 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks." At first glance, it appears merely to prove the date, a timestamp, evidence that the block could not have been created earlier. That explanation is technically correct, but detectives learn to distrust explanations that answer only half the question. Why this headline? Why not a sports score? Why not weather news? Why not any of the countless headlines published that day? The choice feels deliberate, almost theatrical. The newspaper itself was ordinary. The message was not. Read it again. Not as a timestamp, but as a statement. The Chancellor on the brink of another bailout for banks. The sentence functions almost like a quiet accusation. No emotional language, no slogans, no manifesto, simply a reminder. This system rescues those at the center. The rest must fend for themselves. Satoshi never publicly explained the quotation. That silence has become part of the mystery. Yet silence often communicates as powerfully as speech. The Genesis message resembles something left behind by an anonymous detective at the conclusion of an investigation. A single clue, carefully chosen, inviting future generations to ask why. Was Bitcoin merely a technological invention, or was it something else entirely? Most discussions today focus on Bitcoin's price, charts, markets, investment portfolios, exchange-traded funds, volatility, speculation. Ironically, these conversations often obscure Bitcoin's original context. The earliest writings surrounding Bitcoin rarely celebrate wealth. Instead, they repeatedly discuss trust, centralization, inflation, financial sovereignty. The language sounds less like investment marketing and more like political philosophy. That distinction matters because motives matter. Suppose a detective finds an unusual machine inside an abandoned warehouse. Before asking how it works, the detective asks why it was built. Purpose reveals design. Bitcoin appears designed around one remarkable principle. No government may create additional units whenever convenient. No central bank may alter monetary policy through executive decision. No board of directors may vote to dilute existing holders. The rules exist. The rules apply equally to everyone. Changing them requires broad agreement across the network. That idea represented an extraordinary departure from conventional finance. Traditional currencies depend upon trusted institutions. Central banks manage supply. Commercial banks create credit. Governments influence monetary policy during emergencies. Supporters argue such flexibility prevents economic catastrophe. Critics argue it invites political manipulation. The debate extends back centuries. Bitcoin entered that debate with an uncompromising proposal: replace institutional discretion with mathematical predictability. 21 million coins, no more, ever. Whether this represents economic genius or dangerous rigidity remains fiercely contested. But one thing is undeniable. It reflects philosophy as much as technology. Some observers have therefore described Bitcoin as digital gold. Others have described it as programmable money. Still others see something more radical: a declaration of independence, not from one government, but from centralized monetary authority itself. Here, however, our investigation requires caution. Legends often exaggerate. It would be simplistic to claim Bitcoin emerged solely to overthrow banks. The evidence suggests something subtler. Satoshi rarely wrote like a revolutionary seeking chaos. Instead, the writings reveal someone deeply skeptical of concentrated trust. Banks were not necessarily portrayed as evil. Rather, they were portrayed as vulnerable. Human institutions fail, governments make mistakes, executives pursue incentives, political leaders face pressures. History demonstrates these truths repeatedly. Bitcoin proposed an alternative architecture, one designed to reduce the consequences of human failure. Whether it succeeds remains another question entirely. Yet, there is another clue that investigators rarely discuss. If Satoshi's objective had been personal wealth, the strategy seems remarkably strange. The creator launched the system, mined an enormous number of early coins, then gradually withdrew from public life. No marketing campaign followed, no corporation claimed ownership, no patent licensing program appeared, no attempt emerged to dominate the network commercially. Eventually, Satoshi disappeared, leaving behind one of the largest untouched fortunes in modern history. That behavior remains profoundly difficult to explain through ordinary financial motives. People seeking riches usually collect them. People seeking power usually exercise it. People seeking fame usually defend it. Satoshi did none of those things. Instead, the creator vanished, almost as though anonymity itself had always been the final objective. Perhaps that decision protected Bitcoin from becoming dependent upon its founder. Perhaps it protected the founder from governments, perhaps both. The truth remains hidden, yet motives leave patterns, and every pattern tells a story. The Genesis block's newspaper headline appears less like a celebration and more like an opening argument, a quiet declaration that the existing monetary order had revealed its deepest weakness, not merely excessive risk, but excessive dependence on institutions considered too important to fail. Bitcoin answered with a radically different proposition. What if, instead of trusting powerful organizations, we trusted transparent rules? What if money obeyed mathematics rather than political expediency? What if consensus replaced command? Whether those questions can ever be fully realized is still uncertain. The world continues arguing. Economists remain divided. Governments continue experimenting with regulation. Central banks develop their own digital currencies. The debate grows larger every year. Yet beneath every argument lies the same silent message embedded inside Bitcoin's first block. A reminder frozen permanently in digital stone. A reminder that this invention did not emerge during prosperity. It emerged from disappointment, from distrust, from observing one financial crisis reshape the beliefs of an entire generation. Every mystery has a motive. The collapse of 2008 may not reveal who Satoshi Nakamoto was, but it reveals something equally important: the world into which Satoshi chose to speak. And perhaps the world that made someone believe an entirely new form of money was no longer merely possible, but necessary. The next clue, however, will lead us away from collapsing banks and into something even stranger. For if Bitcoin truly was designed as an answer, we must now identify the mind capable of asking the right question in the first place. Chapter 3: The Genesis Block and the Curse of 1 Million Bitcoin. Every investigation eventually reaches a room that feels different from all the others. The air grows quieter, the clues become stranger, and even the most skeptical detective begins to wonder whether coincidence has finally reached its limit. For us, that room is the Genesis block. Every civilization has its founding myth. Ancient Rome had Romulus. Modern America has Philadelphia. The internet has ARPANET. Bitcoin has a single block of data created on one winter afternoon, January 3rd, 2009. At first glance, nothing remarkable happened that day. No television cameras gathered outside a laboratory. No journalists rushed to report a technological breakthrough. No government officials announced the birth of a new monetary system. Outside, the world remained preoccupied with recession. Factories continued closing. Banks continued trembling. Families continued wondering whether tomorrow would bring another round of layoffs. Meanwhile, somewhere behind an ordinary computer screen, someone pressed a key. A processor awakened. Lines of code began executing. Mathematical functions started racing through silicon circuits. Electricity became computation. Computation became proof. And proof became history. The first Bitcoin block came into existence. No applause, no audience. Only the quiet hum of a computer working alone. There is something almost poetic about imagining that moment. The world's first decentralized monetary network did not begin inside a government treasury. It did not emerge from the headquarters of an investment bank. It was born in solitude, Perhaps a small office, perhaps a spare bedroom, perhaps a university laboratory, perhaps somewhere no one has ever suspected. We simply do not know. That uncertainty follows every step of this investigation. We know what happened. We rarely know where or to whom. The Genesis block did more than create a blockchain. It created possibility. For the first time, digital money existed without a central issuer. No executive signed the transaction. No institution approved the launch. No authority granted permission. The network simply began. Then something curious happened. The first Bitcoins started appearing. Not through printing presses, not through government decree, not through corporate accounting. They emerged as rewards for computational work. Mining. The word itself sounds industrial. Images of pickaxes and underground tunnels come to mind. Yet Bitcoin miners dug through no mountains. They excavated mathematics. Every calculation represented work. Every successful solution strengthened the network. Every newly created coin carried proof that real computational effort had been invested. This was unlike any monetary system the modern world had ever seen. Gold required miners. Bitcoin required processors. Gold demanded physical labor. Bitcoin demanded electrical energy and cryptographic computation. Different tools, the same ancient principle. Scarcity has a cost. During those earliest days, however, there was almost no one else participating. The network was astonishingly quiet. No massive mining farms, no specialized hardware, no billion-dollar corporations competing for rewards, only a handful of curious programmers exploring an unusual experiment, and one participant stood above all the others: Satoshi Nakamoto. If later research is correct, Satoshi mined continuously throughout Bitcoin's infancy. Not greedily, methodically, patiently, block after block, day after day. As though someone understood that a decentralized network could not survive without an active participant during its fragile beginning. Those early rewards accumulated: 10 coins, 50 coins, hundreds, thousands, eventually hundreds of thousands. Then something even more extraordinary occurred. Researchers studying the blockchain began identifying distinctive mining patterns unlike those produced by other participants. The evidence remains debated. No conclusion is universally accepted, yet one estimate appears repeatedly throughout academic research and blockchain analysis. Satoshi Nakamoto may have accumulated approximately 1 million Bitcoin, 1 million. Pause for a moment and consider what those words mean today. Depending upon Bitcoin's market price, that fortune would rank among the largest personal fortunes in modern history, greater than the wealth of many monarchs, greater than the market value of countless global corporations, a treasure unlike any ever assembled by a private individual through the creation of software. And yet, there is a catch. Those coins sleep. Investigators have given this mysterious collection many names over the years. One nickname appears particularly fitting: the Dragon's Wallet. Ancient legends often describe dragons guarding unimaginable treasure, not spending it, not sharing it, simply watching. Silent, motionless, untouchable. Bitcoin possesses its own dragon, an address, or more accurately, a collection of early addresses believed by many researchers to belong to Satoshi himself. The treasure remains exactly where history left it, year after year. Bull market after bull market, crash after crash, political elections, global pandemics, bank failures, wars, technological revolutions. The coins remain still, not one meaningful movement, not one extravagant purchase, not one yacht, not one private island, not one public donation proving ownership. Imagine possessing unimaginable wealth while refusing to spend even the smallest meaningful fraction. It defies ordinary human behavior. Naturally, detectives become suspicious. Why? The simplest explanation suggests discipline. Satoshi understood that spending early coins might reveal identity. Blockchain transactions leave permanent records. Perhaps anonymity demanded absolute restraint. Another theory proposes something more tragic. Perhaps Satoshi died. Private keys, once lost, cannot be recovered. Bitcoin does not negotiate with death. Unlike banks, there is no forgotten password department, no customer service representative, no inheritance hotline. Lose the keys, lose the fortune. Forever. Others imagine darker possibilities. Perhaps Satoshi feared assassination, kidnapping, government prosecution, political retaliation. What better way to eliminate temptation than never touching the treasure at all? Then comes an even stranger possibility. What if the untouched fortune itself was intentional? a permanent sacrifice. Imagine the creator deciding that Bitcoin could never truly become decentralized, while its inventor remained visibly wealthy and influential. Suppose spending the coins would transform Bitcoin into Satoshi's currency. Suppose leaving them untouched transformed Bitcoin into everyone's currency instead. It is a remarkable thought and impossible to prove, yet every mystery contains possibilities that cannot be dismissed merely because they sound extraordinary. Still, the Dragon's Wallet presents investigators with another unsettling question. What happens if the dragon wakes? Picture tomorrow morning. Financial markets open as usual. Coffee is poured. Trading desks prepare for another ordinary day. Then someone notices something unusual. A transaction. One early Bitcoin address, believed for years to belong to Satoshi, has suddenly become active. At first, only blockchain analysts notice. Within minutes, social media erupts. News organizations interrupt scheduled programming. Financial television abandons every planned interview. Trading algorithms begin reacting before human analysts fully understand what has happened. Bitcoin's price starts moving violently. No one knows why. Was it Satoshi? Was it a hacker? Were private keys stolen? Had someone finally solved the greatest mystery in digital finance? Fear spreads faster than facts. Some investors rush to sell. Others rush to buy before everyone else. Volatility feeds upon itself. Billions of dollars disappear, then reappear, then disappear again. Governments issue statements urging calm. Cryptocurrency exchanges experience unprecedented traffic. Trading systems struggle beneath overwhelming demand. Economists debate whether history is witnessing the return of Bitcoin's creator or the beginning of its greatest crisis. Imagine further. Suppose those coins continue moving. Not dozens, not hundreds. Hundreds of thousands. Markets would interpret every transaction differently. Some would see confidence. Others would see abandonment. Still others would see catastrophe. One person, or one entity, would suddenly possess the power to reshape global financial psychology with a handful of digital signatures. Perhaps the market would survive. Perhaps it would recover quickly. Or perhaps confidence, the same invisible force that nearly destroyed traditional finance in 2008, would once again become the decisive battlefield. The irony is difficult to ignore. Bitcoin emerged partly because trust in institutions collapsed. Yet today, one of Bitcoin's greatest uncertainties centers upon trust in someone no one has ever met. The invisible founder, the absent architect, the silent owner of history's most mysterious fortune. Fortunately, or perhaps unfortunately, the dragon continues sleeping. Each passing year deepens the mystery. Every untouched market cycle strengthens the legend. Every silent wallet fuels another generation of speculation. Some mysteries fade with time. This one grows. As investigators, we must resist drawing premature conclusions. An untouched fortune proves nothing by itself. It neither confirms Satoshi's identity nor reveals Satoshi's fate. It simply leaves behind another remarkable clue. 1 million Bitcoin. Potentially worth tens of billions of dollars, protected not by armies, not by vaults, not by governments, but by mathematics and silence. That combination has never existed before in human history. Perhaps it never will again. Somewhere behind those dormant addresses lies a story of discipline, conviction, fear, or sacrifice. We do not yet know which, but we do know this. As long as the dragon's wallet remains asleep, the world's greatest social detective story remains unfinished, because someday, whether next week, next decade, or perhaps never, those ancient coins may speak. And if they do, the sound may echo through every financial market on Earth. Until that day arrives, the silence itself remains one of the most powerful clues in the case of the invisible creator known only as Satoshi Nakamoto. Chapter 4. Hal Finney, the neighbor who knew too much. Every great investigation eventually produces its first truly compelling suspect. Not because the evidence is overwhelming, but because for the first time, the pieces appear to fit together. A brilliant mind, perfect technical qualifications, an uncanny connection to the central mystery. Enough coincidence to make even experienced investigators pause. For many years, that suspect has been Hal Finney. His name appears again and again whenever serious researchers attempt to answer the question that has haunted the digital age. Who was Satoshi Nakamoto? But every detective eventually learns a dangerous lesson. The strongest suspect is not always the guilty one. Sometimes the brightest light merely casts the darkest shadow. To understand Hal Finney, we must first understand the world that existed before Bitcoin. Long before cryptocurrency became a trillion-dollar industry, before exchanges, before digital wallets, before headlines and speculation, there was a small community of programmers who believed privacy would become one of humanity's defining struggles. Hal was already there. He was not chasing fame. He was not chasing fortune. He was building tools. Born with an extraordinary talent for mathematics and software engineering, Hal became one of the earliest and most respected figures in modern cryptography. Those who worked alongside him rarely described him as loud or attention-seeking. Instead, they remembered curiosity, patience, precision, the qualities of someone more interested in solving impossible problems than receiving applause. If the cypherpunk movement had knights, Hal would have stood among its finest. He believed computers could empower individuals rather than merely serve governments and corporations. He believed cryptography was not simply mathematics, it was freedom expressed through code. These beliefs would eventually place him at the center of one of history's greatest mysteries. When Satoshi Nakamoto released the Bitcoin software in early 2009, almost nobody cared. The world remained consumed by economic collapse. To most programmers, Bitcoin looked like another fascinating experiment that would probably fail. Hal saw something different. He downloaded the software, he tested it, he communicated directly with Satoshi through emails and technical discussions. More importantly, he believed. History remembers many inventors. It often forgets the first believers. Without early believers, revolutionary ideas rarely survive long enough to become revolutions. Then came one of the most famous transactions in digital history. Satoshi Nakamoto sent Hal Finney 10 Bitcoin. 10. Today, that number sounds almost insignificant. Back then, it represented something extraordinary. Not wealth, not investment, a handshake. The first documented transfer of Bitcoin between two individuals, a proof that the system actually worked. Imagine the scene. No cameras, no celebration. No expectation that this small transaction would someday be discussed in books, documentaries, and university classrooms. Two programmers, one experimental network, 10 digital coins. History often enters quietly. That transaction marked the beginning of Bitcoin's life as something more than theory. From that moment onward, Bitcoin became real. Naturally, investigators became fascinated by Hal. Who better to create Bitcoin than the first person capable of understanding it completely? His qualifications seemed almost perfect. Expert programmer, cryptographer, deep involvement in the cypherpunk community, early participation, direct communication with Satoshi. The case appeared remarkably strong. Then investigators discovered something even stranger, something almost too improbable to believe. Hal Finney lived only a short distance from a man named Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto. Pause for a moment. Not merely Nakamoto, Satoshi Nakamoto, the same name that would later become one of the most famous pseudonyms in technological history. The coincidence feels almost cinematic. Two neighbors, one an elite cryptographer deeply involved in Bitcoin, the other sharing the exact name that would become Bitcoin's anonymous creator. How close were they? Only a few blocks apart, close enough to transform coincidence into irresistible speculation. Detectives immediately asked the obvious question: what if Hal needed a pseudonym? What if he glanced at a neighborhood directory or a mailbox, or simply remembered the quiet man living nearby? Could Satoshi Nakamoto have been borrowed? The theory spread rapidly. It possessed everything the public loves: a hidden identity, a neighborhood coincidence, a brilliant programmer, an ordinary man unknowingly lending his name to history. It sounded almost perfect, perhaps too perfect. Real investigations demand skepticism. Coincidences happen, rarely. But they do happen, even astonishing coincidences. The challenge lies in distinguishing meaningful evidence from remarkable chance. Researchers examined Hal's writing style. They compared his emails with Satoshi's. They analyzed programming habits, coding preferences, vocabulary, punctuation, even the rhythm of their sentences. Some similarities emerged, others did not. Experts reached conflicting conclusions. The mystery only deepened. Yet perhaps the strongest argument against Hal being Satoshi came not from cryptography, but from character. Throughout his life, Hal consistently acknowledged Satoshi as someone else. He preserved emails, shared technical discussions, answered questions with remarkable openness. If he truly wished to deceive the world, He maintained that deception with extraordinary discipline. Possible? Certainly. Proven? Not remotely. Then, as though the story were not already tragic enough, another chapter began, one no detective could solve. Hal Finney received devastating news. He had amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, a disease that gradually destroys the body's ability to move. Muscles weaken, speech becomes difficult, walking disappears. Eventually, even breathing requires assistance. The mind, however, often remains astonishingly clear. Imagine possessing one of the sharpest intellects in modern cryptography while your body slowly transforms into a prison. Friends watched with heartbreak as Hal's physical world narrowed, finger by finger, step by step, year by year. Most people confronted with such suffering retreat from public life. Hal responded differently. He continued programming for as long as possible. He continued participating in discussions. He continued thinking. Technology gradually became his voice. Eventually, eye-tracking systems allowed him to communicate after nearly every other physical ability had faded. His determination inspired admiration far beyond the cryptocurrency community. Yet for mystery hunters, the disease introduced another unsettling possibility. Suppose, just suppose, Hal really had been Satoshi. Suppose he had deliberately concealed his identity. Suppose the private keys controlling Bitcoin's earliest fortune remained known only to him. What then? ALS would have transformed the greatest secret in digital history into a race against time. Could the world's most valuable cryptographic mystery have become trapped inside a failing body? Could passwords, private keys, hidden intentions have vanished forever alongside one extraordinary human mind? No evidence confirms such speculation. None. Responsible investigators must say so clearly, but mysteries thrive where certainty ends. The imagination naturally wanders toward unanswered questions. In August 2014, Hal Finney died. His passing was mourned throughout the cryptographic community. Many remembered his brilliance, many remembered his kindness, many remembered his unwavering optimism despite unimaginable physical suffering. His story might have ended there. Instead, the mystery continued. Because death does something peculiar to investigations. It closes some doors forever and opens others. Those convinced Hal was Satoshi argued that the secret had gone to the grave. Those convinced he was innocent argued that one of Bitcoin's greatest pioneers had spent years answering questions about an identity he never possessed. Either way, history had lost one of its most remarkable witnesses. There is one final detail worth considering. Hal believed deeply in preserving knowledge. He believed technology should outlive individuals. He understood better than almost anyone that decentralized systems matter precisely because human beings are temporary. Perhaps that philosophy explains why he admired Bitcoin so quickly. Whether he created it or merely recognized its genius, he understood its significance before almost anyone else. That alone secured his place in history. As detectives, we must separate admiration from evidence. Hal Finney remains one of the strongest candidates ever proposed. His expertise was undeniable. His proximity to the mystery was extraordinary. His life intersected with Bitcoin at every crucial moment. And yet, the decisive proof never appeared. No confession, no cryptographic signature, no document, no undeniable revelation, only clues. Compelling, haunting, incomplete clues. The investigation therefore continues. Was Hal Finney the invisible architect hiding behind another name? Was he simply Bitcoin's first and most important collaborator? Or was he exactly what he always claimed to be, an exceptionally gifted programmer who immediately recognized greatness when he saw it? We cannot yet answer, but perhaps that uncertainty is fitting, because in every unforgettable mystery, there comes a moment when the detective realizes the most important witness is no longer alive to testify. And the silence that follows can be more difficult to interpret than any spoken confession. As we leave Hal Finney behind, we carry both admiration and doubt. The evidence points toward him. The evidence points away from him. Like so many trails in the hunt for Satoshi Nakamoto, it ends not with certainty, but with another locked door waiting to be opened. Nick Szabo and the stolen blueprint. Every investigation has a suspect who seems almost too perfect. Not because they were caught committing the crime, not because they confessed, but because every new clue appears to circle back toward the same name. If Hal Finney was the mystery's most beloved suspect, then Nick Szabo may be its most intellectually compelling one. For nearly 2 decades, researchers, journalists, cryptographers, linguists, and amateur detectives have returned to his work with the same uneasy feeling. What if Bitcoin was never an entirely new invention? What if it was the final evolution of an idea that had already existed for years? And what if the person who conceived that idea simply chose never to claim the finished masterpiece? To understand why Nick Szabo became such a powerful suspect, we must step backward once again, long before the word cryptocurrency entered everyday language, before Bitcoin exchanges, before billion-dollar mining companies, before digital asset regulations. Nick Szabo was already thinking about money, not merely how money moved, but why money existed at all. Unlike many programmers, Szabo never confined himself to software. His interests stretched across economics, cryptography, computer science, history, political philosophy, and even ancient legal systems. Reading his essays feels less like studying technical documentation and more like listening to a Renaissance scholar wandering effortlessly between civilizations. He asked unusual questions. Why did gold become valuable? Why do societies trust contracts? Can trust be engineered? Most people accepted money as a social convention. Nick treated it as an engineering problem. That distinction changes everything. Years before Bitcoin appeared, Szabo proposed a system he called BitGold. The name now sounds almost prophetic. When investigators first compare BitGold with Bitcoin, the similarities are startling. Computational work creates scarce digital assets. Ownership is secured through cryptography. Participants verify records without relying entirely upon traditional financial institutions. Digital scarcity, distributed trust, economic incentives. Many of the concepts later associated with Bitcoin already existed inside BitGold. It is tempting to stop there, to conclude the mystery has been solved, but detectives know better. Similarity does not equal identity. BitGold remained an extraordinary proposal. Bitcoin became a functioning system. Between those two facts lies an enormous gulf. Nick had designed an elegant blueprint. Satoshi built a working city, or perhaps the blueprint and the city came from the same architect. That possibility has haunted investigators ever since. The evidence becomes even more intriguing when language enters the investigation. Fingerprints can identify hands. Stylometry attempts to identify minds. Every writer possesses unconscious habits, preferred punctuation, favorite phrases, sentence rhythm, vocabulary choices. Even the spacing around commas and dashes can become surprisingly distinctive. People change opinions more easily than they change writing habits. Forensic linguists have long used stylometry to investigate anonymous documents. Could the same techniques identify Satoshi Nakamoto? Researchers began comparing the Bitcoin white paper with essays written by Nick Szabo. The results attracted enormous attention. Certain analyses suggested striking similarities. Both writers preferred unusually precise technical language. Both carefully balanced formal academic prose with accessible explanations. Both displayed remarkable consistency in punctuation. Even certain uncommon expressions appeared repeatedly in both bodies of work. Some investigators claimed the overlap was extraordinary. Others estimated statistical similarities approaching levels rarely observed between unrelated authors. Newspapers transformed these observations into dramatic headlines. 90% match, the real Satoshi found, the linguistic fingerprint. The story spread around the world. Yet science rarely rewards sensational certainty. Stylometry is powerful. It is not magic. Language reveals patterns. It does not produce convictions. Two individuals immersed within the same intellectual community often develop surprisingly similar habits. Cypherpunks read one another's work, quoted one another, debated one another, borrowed terminology naturally over many years. Shared vocabulary does not necessarily imply shared identity. Still, the similarities remain difficult to ignore. The mystery deepened further when researchers examined timing. Months before Bitcoin's public release, Nick reportedly revisited discussions surrounding BitGold. Some observers viewed this as coincidence. Others saw preparation. Was an old idea quietly evolving into something revolutionary, or was a respected scholar merely continuing years of independent research? Again, certainty remained elusive. As our investigation progresses, another aspect of Nick's personality becomes increasingly fascinating. Unlike many public intellectuals, he never seemed interested in celebrity. He rarely chased headlines. He preferred essays to interviews. arguments to publicity, thoughtful analysis over public performance. Those who interacted with him often described a man who valued ideas more than recognition. Curiously, those qualities also resemble the public behavior of Satoshi Nakamoto. Reserved, methodical, patient, almost allergic to unnecessary attention. The resemblance is difficult to overlook. Then comes perhaps the most psychologically intriguing question of all. Nick Szabo has repeatedly denied being Satoshi Nakamoto. Not once, not twice, many times. His denials have remained remarkably consistent across the years. If he truly created Bitcoin, why continue denying it? Three possibilities immediately emerge. The first is obvious. He is telling the truth. Every detective must remember that innocent people sometimes look suspicious simply because reality produces remarkable coincidences. Perhaps Nick genuinely invented BitGold. Perhaps Satoshi independently expanded those ideas. Perhaps history simply placed two brilliant minds upon parallel paths. It has happened before. Scientific breakthroughs often emerge simultaneously in different places. The second possibility is considerably darker. Suppose Nick really is Satoshi. Imagine creating an entirely new monetary system outside governmental control. Imagine watching that invention grow into a multi-trillion-dollar global phenomenon. Would revealing your identity be wise? Governments investigate financial crimes. Tax authorities monitor wealth. Intelligence agencies analyze disruptive technologies. Organized criminals target individuals believed to possess enormous fortunes. Public recognition can become a prison. Anonymity may become the only meaningful protection. If that were true, every denial would become understandable, not deception for personal gain. Self-preservation. The third possibility is perhaps the most human. Suppose Nick contributed enormously to Bitcoin's intellectual foundations, but did not actually write the white paper. Imagine spending decades developing concepts remarkably similar to Bitcoin, then watching another anonymous figure successfully integrate them into history's most influential digital currency. Would claiming authorship feel dishonest? Certainly. Would admitting profound intellectual influence risk endless misunderstanding? Perhaps. Would silence become the easiest path? Possibly. Human motivation rarely obeys simple logic. Pride, humility, fear, professional ethics, all can produce outwardly identical behavior. This complexity frustrates investigators, because psychology seldom leaves mathematical proof. There is another subtle clue that deserves attention. Nick's writings consistently display deep historical awareness. Rather than discussing technology in isolation, he often connected modern cryptography with centuries-old legal traditions, monetary systems, and institutional evolution. Bitcoin demonstrates a similar perspective. The white paper appears technical, yet its implications extend far beyond computer science. Both minds, whether one or two, understood that money is never merely code. Money is trust, law, history, human behavior, civilization itself. That intellectual breadth distinguishes Nick from many ordinary software engineers. Bitcoin required more than exceptional programming. It required understanding why previous monetary systems succeeded and why they ultimately failed. Nick certainly possessed that understanding. Whether Satoshi was Nick remains another question entirely. As detectives, we must confront an uncomfortable truth. The strongest evidence against Nick Szabo may simply be the absence of decisive evidence. No leaked emails proving authorship, no cryptographic signature from Satoshi's known keys, no private documents, no trusted collaborator stepping forward with indisputable confirmation. Only increasingly persuasive circumstantial evidence, compelling enough to sustain endless debate, insufficient to close the case. Perhaps that is why Nick continues occupying such a unique position within this investigation. He is not merely a suspect, he is also an intellectual ancestor. Even if Bitcoin was created by someone else, that creator almost certainly walked across ground Nick had already explored. Ideas rarely emerge from empty space. They evolve, they accumulate, they inherit. BitGold may never have become Bitcoin, yet Bitcoin almost certainly could not have become Bitcoin without the path BitGold first illuminated. Near the end of every difficult investigation, detectives often discover that solving the mystery requires abandoning one cherished assumption. Perhaps ours is this. Perhaps we have been searching for a solitary genius, when Bitcoin may instead represent the culmination of decades of collective intellectual evolution. If that is true, Nick Szabo's importance remains enormous, regardless of whether he signed the name Satoshi Nakamoto. Some architects design foundations, others raise walls, others place the final stone. History remembers the completed monument. It often forgets those who shaped the ground beneath it. As we close Nick Szabo's case file, the evidence remains balanced on a knife's edge, too substantial to dismiss, too incomplete to convict. He remains one of the investigation's most fascinating figures, a scholar whose ideas echo throughout Bitcoin's design, whose writing seems to whisper through the white paper, and whose persistent denials continue to fuel one of the greatest intellectual mysteries of the modern age. Whether those denials conceal a secret or simply protect the truth that he has spoken all along is a question that remains locked behind the same cryptographic door we have been trying to open since the beginning. And somewhere beyond that locked door, the real Satoshi Nakamoto may still be waiting in silence. Chapter 6. Adam Back and the Secret Society of Hashcash. Every mystery eventually reaches a point where the evidence begins to resist ordinary explanations. One suspect seems too obvious, another lacks the necessary skills, a third possesses the motive but not the opportunity. Then a more unsettling possibility quietly appears. What if the detective has been asking the wrong question from the very beginning? Not, who is Satoshi Nakamoto? But, what if Satoshi Nakamoto was never a single person at all? That question leads us to one of the most influential cryptographers of the modern era, a man whose fingerprints appear throughout Bitcoin's technical DNA, a man whose work existed years before Bitcoin was even imagined, a man named Adam Back. Unlike many personalities who later entered the cryptocurrency industry, Adam Back did not become famous because of Bitcoin. His reputation had already been established. Within the small but intensely respected world of applied cryptography, he was regarded as one of the field's most original thinkers. Soft-spoken, methodical, exceptionally analytical, the kind of engineer who preferred elegant solutions over dramatic announcements. If cryptography were an ancient kingdom, Adam would have been one of its master blacksmiths. He forged tools, others built civilizations with them. Among those tools was an invention called Hashcash. At first glance, Hashcash seems almost unrelated to digital money. Its original purpose was surprisingly ordinary: spam. By the late 1990s, email was becoming one of the internet's greatest success stories. It was also becoming one of its greatest annoyances. Sending millions of unwanted emails cost almost nothing. Receiving them cost everyone else time and attention. Adam Back proposed a beautifully simple idea. Before sending an email, a computer should solve a small mathematical puzzle, not difficult enough to inconvenience ordinary users, just expensive enough to discourage mass abuse. For one email, the cost would be almost invisible. For 10 million spam messages, the cost would become overwhelming. The concept was revolutionary. Instead of asking permission from a central authority, the sender would demonstrate computational effort. Work itself became evidence of sincerity. The mechanism became known as proof of work. Years later, Bitcoin would rely upon exactly that principle, not for filtering email, but for securing an entirely decentralized monetary system. That connection immediately attracted investigators. Proof of work lies at the heart of Bitcoin. Hashcash pioneered proof of work. Adam Back created Hashcash. Surely that cannot simply be coincidence. Indeed, Satoshi Nakamoto explicitly cited Adam Back's work inside the Bitcoin white paper. Unlike many anonymous inventors who conceal their influences, Satoshi openly acknowledged intellectual debts. Adam's research was not hidden, it was foundational. Without proof of work, Bitcoin as we know it would almost certainly not exist. Yet this creates another mystery. If Satoshi admired Adam's work so deeply, how close were the two men? Fortunately, unlike many historical investigations, we possess part of the correspondence: emails, technical discussions, professional exchanges, enough to demonstrate genuine communication, not enough to eliminate every doubt. As researchers reconstructed the timeline, something peculiar emerged. Certain conversations appear incomplete, some intervals feel unusually quiet, important developmental stages seem to contain remarkably little surviving correspondence. Now, caution is essential. Absence of evidence is not evidence of conspiracy. Emails disappear. Hard drives fail. People delete messages. History rarely preserves every conversation. Still, experienced investigators pay attention whenever silence appears, precisely where explanation would be most useful. Imagine two engineers collaborating on a revolutionary project. One might expect constant communication, daily technical discussions, lengthy debates, detailed design revisions. Instead, the surviving record occasionally feels surprisingly sparse. Were additional conversations lost, conducted through different channels, or did no such conversations ever exist? No one knows, and uncertainty has a remarkable habit of inviting speculation. Among the boldest theories is one that refuses to disappear. What if Satoshi Nakamoto was never one individual? What if the name concealed an entire team? The idea initially sounds extravagant until one begins examining Bitcoin itself. Consider the range of expertise required: advanced cryptography, distributed computer networking, economics, game theory, software engineering, monetary history, security architecture, open source development, fluent technical writing. Even today, finding one individual equally skilled in every one of those disciplines would be extraordinarily difficult. Finding such a person in 2008 seems even less likely. Perhaps the explanation is collaboration. Many revolutionary technologies emerged from teams rather than solitary geniuses. The Manhattan Project, ARPANET, the World Wide Web, modern operating systems. History often simplifies collaboration into a single legendary name. Reality is usually more crowded. Within this framework, Adam Back becomes something different, not necessarily Satoshi himself, potentially a member, or perhaps even a leader. Some enthusiasts have gone further, imagining an informal circle of elite cryptographers quietly working together beneath the radar of public attention. A hidden fellowship, a modern secret society. Its members sharing ideas across mailing lists, conferences, and encrypted correspondence for years before Bitcoin appeared. The press occasionally refers to this speculation as the secret society theory. The phrase captures imagination immediately, yet it risks misunderstanding what actually existed. There was no known underground organization with initiation rituals or hidden headquarters, no secret fortress filled with anonymous programmers plotting financial revolution. The reality was subtler. The cypherpunk movement already functioned as an unusually close intellectual community. Researchers challenged one another, improved one another's work, borrowed concepts, rejected weak ideas, strengthened promising ones. Knowledge circulated continuously. In such an environment, individual ownership becomes surprisingly difficult to define. When one engineer invents a tool, another improves it, a third combines it with unrelated concepts, and a fourth solves the final obstacle, who deserves credit? Perhaps everyone, perhaps no one. This possibility complicates our investigation enormously. If Bitcoin emerged from decades of shared intellectual evolution, then searching for one inventor may resemble searching for the inventor of language itself. Still, the Adam Back theory possesses undeniable attractions. His technical qualifications remain extraordinary. Proof of work became Bitcoin's beating heart. His reputation earned Satoshi's respect. His correspondence overlaps with Bitcoin's earliest development. Few candidates possess stronger credentials, yet every serious detective must confront an inconvenient fact. Adam Back has consistently denied being Satoshi Nakamoto, like Hal Finney, like Nick Szabo, like nearly every major suspect. His public statements have remained remarkably measured. He acknowledges Bitcoin's importance. He acknowledges communication with Satoshi. He rejects claims of authorship. Could those denials be truthful? Certainly. Could they be strategic? Possibly. Could revealing the truth, if there were one, create legal, political, or personal risks extending far beyond ordinary public attention? No responsible investigator can dismiss that possibility. Bitcoin today influences global financial markets. Governments regulate it, corporations invest billions, central banks monitor it. The identity of its creator carries implications extending well beyond curiosity. Anonymity may remain the safest position regardless of the truth. There is another psychological dimension worth considering. Suppose, for a moment, that Bitcoin truly resulted from collaborative effort. Would every contributor necessarily agree to reveal the story? Perhaps not. Shared secrets often survive precisely because revealing them would expose everyone simultaneously. History contains remarkable examples of collective silence, scientific collaborations, intelligence operations, industrial research, confidential government projects. Groups frequently preserve confidentiality more successfully than outsiders imagine. Again, this proves nothing. It merely reminds us that human behavior is rarely as straightforward as detective novels suggest. As our investigation deepens, one conclusion grows increasingly difficult to escape. Bitcoin does not resemble an accidental invention. Its architecture appears unusually mature from the moment of release. The white paper feels polished. The software, while imperfect, demonstrates exceptional coherence. Major design decisions reinforce one another with remarkable consistency. Whether this reflects one extraordinary intellect or multiple extraordinary intellects working in harmony remains one of the defining questions of our age. Adam Back therefore occupies a fascinating position within our case files. He may be the architect's greatest influence. He may be an early collaborator. He may simply be one of the brilliant predecessors whose work made Bitcoin possible. Or, in the most provocative interpretation, he may have helped lead a collaboration whose members collectively vanished behind a single fictional identity. If so, Satoshi Nakamoto would not describe a person. It would describe a mask, a name deliberately chosen so that no individual could ever become larger than the invention itself. There is a certain elegance in that possibility. Bitcoin was designed without a central authority. Perhaps its creator was designed the same way, a decentralized inventor for a decentralized currency. As detectives, however, elegance cannot substitute for evidence. The theory remains exactly that, a theory, an intriguing one supported by remarkable qualifications, historical proximity, and technical influence, yet still lacking the decisive proof required to close the investigation. The deeper we travel into this mystery, the more elusive certainty becomes. Each suspect teaches us something important. Hal Finney showed us belief. Nick Szabo revealed intellectual ancestry. Adam Back demonstrates foundational engineering. Individually, each explains part of Bitcoin. Collectively, they begin to explain something larger, not merely who Satoshi might have been, but the extraordinary ecosystem of minds from which Bitcoin emerged. And perhaps that is the greatest clue of all, because somewhere inside that remarkable community of cryptographers, whether embodied in one brilliant individual or concealed within a collaboration history, has never fully uncovered. The name Satoshi Nakamoto was born. The question is no longer whether the answer exists, the question is whether it was ever meant to be found. Chapter 7. Craig Wright, Master Imposter or Deluded Genius. Every great mystery attracts imitators. The disappearance of a king produces false heirs. The discovery of buried treasure summons counterfeit maps. The creation of a legend invites those willing to wear another person's mask. The mystery of Satoshi Nakamoto proved no different. As Bitcoin's influence spread across the world, as its value climbed from pennies to thousands, and then to tens of thousands of dollars per coin, one question became increasingly valuable. Who created it? For years, no convincing answer emerged. Journalists searched, researchers analyzed code, linguists compared writing styles, cryptographers debated obscure technical clues, yet the identity behind Bitcoin remained hidden. Then, in 2016, everything seemed about to change. A man stepped into the spotlight, confident, educated, technically accomplished, and carrying an astonishing claim. I am Satoshi Nakamoto. His name was Craig Wright. For a brief moment, the world held its breath. Imagine the atmosphere. Television networks interrupted regular programming. Financial newspapers rushed out special editions. Cryptocurrency forums exploded with speculation. Investors wondered whether the greatest mystery in modern technology had finally been solved. After nearly a decade of silence, had Bitcoin's creator truly returned? Craig Wright appeared, at least initially, to possess credentials that demanded attention. He had an academic background. He spoke confidently about cryptography. He claimed involvement with Bitcoin from its earliest days. Most importantly, he insisted he possessed proof. Not vague memories, not persuasive storytelling, cryptographic proof. In the world of Bitcoin, no evidence carries greater authority. The system itself is built upon digital signatures. Mathematics, public key cryptography. One authentic signature from Satoshi's earliest private keys would settle the mystery forever. No courtroom would be necessary. No interviews, no speculation, only mathematics. Truth expressed through cryptography. Craig suggested that such proof existed. Journalists were invited. Influential members of the Bitcoin community attended demonstrations. For a moment, the impossible appeared within reach. Then, the investigation took an extraordinary turn. Some of the world's leading cryptographers began examining the evidence. Carefully, patiently, professionally, and almost immediately, questions emerged. The digital signature presented during the demonstrations did not appear to be what many observers expected. Instead of producing an entirely new signature using Satoshi's private keys, the presentation relied upon material connected to information that was already publicly available from Bitcoin's earliest history. To experienced cryptographers, this distinction was enormous. Imagine a detective claiming possession of a criminal's unique fingerprint, then revealing not a newly discovered fingerprint, but a photograph copied from an old police archive. The photograph may be genuine. It proves nothing about the detective's extraordinary claim. Within hours, technical experts began publishing detailed analyses, line by line, byte by byte. Mathematics replaced emotion. The verdict from many specialists was devastating. The evidence did not demonstrate control of Satoshi's cryptographic keys. Instead, they argued it reused existing information already known to the public. The reactions spread with astonishing speed. Programmers replicated the demonstrations independently. Researchers examined the files. Security experts compared signatures. Again and again, they reached similar conclusions. The proof failed. Not because Craig lacked intelligence, but because mathematics refused to cooperate. One of Bitcoin's defining characteristics is brutal impartiality. The blockchain does not care about reputation or charisma or academic titles or persuasive interviews. Either a private key signs a message or it does not. There is no middle ground, no negotiation, no interpretation. For many investigators, the case appeared closed. Yet Craig Wright did something unexpected. He did not withdraw. He did not quietly disappear. Instead, he doubled down. Years passed. His claims continued. Interviews continued. Public appearances continued, and eventually, courtrooms entered the story. What followed transformed an internet controversy into an international legal drama. Defamation lawsuits, copyright disputes, arguments over authorship, challenges concerning technical evidence. Some of the most closely watched proceedings unfolded in courts in the United Kingdom, where judges were asked to evaluate claims surrounding Craig Wright's asserted identity and documents presented in support of those claims. During these proceedings, experts scrutinized emails, digital records, metadata, and other materials with extraordinary care. The process resembled forensic archaeology more than ordinary litigation. Every timestamp mattered. Every document carried hidden history. Every inconsistency invited deeper examination. Some materials presented in support of Craig's claims were alleged by opposing experts to contain signs of manipulation or anachronisms. The disputes became highly technical, and the courts heard extensive evidence from both sides before reaching conclusions on the issues before them. For detectives, the courtroom became another crime scene. Not because someone had necessarily committed a conventional crime, but because evidence itself stood trial. The central question grew larger than Craig Wright. How does one prove identity in the digital age? Is testimony enough? Is reputation enough? Or must mathematics always deliver the final verdict? Bitcoin itself seemed to answer. Code is indifferent. Either the signature verifies or it does not. That uncompromising standard has fascinated investigators for years, yet another mystery lingered. If Craig Wright truly was not Satoshi, why persist? Most imposters eventually retreat when overwhelming evidence accumulates. Craig did not. This brings us into one of the most fascinating areas of criminal psychology. Human beings lie for many reasons: money, power, protection, fear, love, revenge, recognition. Rarely does a single motive explain every action. Perhaps financial incentives played a role. The identity of Bitcoin's creator carries extraordinary commercial value. Books, conferences, licensing opportunities, business influence. The symbolic authority alone could reshape entire industries. Such incentives cannot be ignored. But money alone rarely explains persistence in the face of relentless public scrutiny. There is another possibility: status. History remembers creators. It rarely remembers observers. To be recognized as the inventor of one of humanity's most influential technologies would guarantee a place in history unlike almost any other. Recognition itself can become addictive. Psychologists have long observed that public identity sometimes evolves into something individuals feel compelled to defend, regardless of mounting contradiction. The boundary between sincere belief, carefully maintained performance, and self-deception can become remarkably difficult to distinguish. This is not unique to technology. History contains explorers who exaggerated discoveries, scientists who claimed breakthroughs they never achieved, military leaders who inflated victories, false royalty, false prophets, false heirs. Each case followed its own psychological path. Some sought wealth, some sought admiration, some appeared eventually to believe their own stories. Detectives call this one of the most dangerous territories in any investigation. When belief and performance begin merging, certainty becomes elusive. It would be irresponsible to diagnose any individual from a distance. Human motivation is rarely accessible through headlines alone. Only the individual truly knows the mixture of ambition, conviction, fear, pride, and identity that shapes deeply personal choices. What investigators can analyze is behavior. Craig Wright repeatedly chose confrontation over retreat. He continued making extraordinary claims despite extraordinary skepticism. He pursued legal avenues. He defended his position publicly. Whether those actions reflected unwavering conviction, strategic calculation, or something more psychologically complex remains a subject of ongoing debate. Curiously, his story teaches us something unexpected about Bitcoin itself. The system was designed specifically so that identity would not determine truth. Imagine if Bitcoin required trusting its creator. The mystery would have become catastrophic. Markets would depend upon personalities, politics, reputation. Instead, Bitcoin depends upon cryptographic verification. Ironically, the controversy surrounding Craig Wright demonstrated the elegance of that design. No matter how persuasive the interviews, no matter how prestigious the credentials, no matter how dramatic the courtroom battles, the blockchain remained silent. Its answer never changed. Mathematics before personality, verification before authority. In a strange way, the controversy strengthened one of Bitcoin's deepest philosophical principles: trust the proof, not the claimant. As detectives, we should resist the temptation to reduce Craig Wright's story to simple caricature. History is rarely divided into heroes and villains. Human beings are considerably more complicated. Whatever the ultimate explanation for his conduct, his claims forced the global cryptocurrency community to confront an essential question. What constitutes proof? That question echoes far beyond Bitcoin. It reaches into journalism, science, law, politics, and every field where extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. The Craig Wright chapter therefore occupies a unique place in our investigation. It is not primarily the story of Bitcoin's creator. It is the story of how modern society evaluates truth when identity itself becomes disputed. The mystery of Satoshi Nakamoto survived not because no one claimed the name, but because the name could not be claimed through words alone. It required something stronger, a cryptographic signature, one mathematical act, one undeniable proof. That proof never arrived, and so the world's greatest digital mystery continued. Craig Wright entered history promising to end the investigation. Instead, he became another chapter within it. Another suspect, another controversy, another reminder that legends attract those eager to wear them. Some masks conceal the truth, others conceal only the person wearing them. The challenge for every detective is discovering which is which. And somewhere beyond every lawsuit, every headline, and every public declaration, the real Satoshi Nakamoto remained exactly where the investigation first found them: invisible, silent, and untouched by the noise surrounding their name. Chapter 8. The CIA invitation and the farewell email. Every investigation contains a moment when the trail suddenly goes cold. The witnesses stop talking, the documents stop appearing, the suspect walks through a final doorway and never returns. For the mystery of Satoshi Nakamoto, that moment arrived in the spring of 2011. Not with an explosion, not with an arrest, not with a dramatic farewell, only an email, a few carefully chosen sentences. Then, silence, permanent silence. By 2010, Bitcoin was no longer merely an obscure experiment discussed by cryptographers. Its tiny community had begun to grow. Programmers improved the software, volunteers solved technical problems, new users downloaded the client. For the first time, Bitcoin felt less like an idea and more like a living ecosystem. At the center of that transition stood an American software developer named Gavin Andresen. If Satoshi was Bitcoin's architect, Gavin gradually became its caretaker, patient, pragmatic, widely respected. He answered questions, improved code, welcomed newcomers, and increasingly assumed responsibilities that Satoshi once handled personally. Their correspondence reflected mutual respect. Satoshi trusted Gavin with growing influence over the project. In hindsight, that transfer of responsibility appears almost ceremonial, as though one guardian quietly prepared another before disappearing into history. Then came an invitation that would later become one of the most debated episodes in Bitcoin's early years. Gavin Andresen was invited to speak before officials associated with a central intelligence agency. The invitation was not a secret operation. It was a public lecture connected with emerging technologies and the future of digital currencies. Nothing in the historical record demonstrates that Gavin became an intelligence asset. Nothing indicates a covert recruitment. Yet the symbolic significance was impossible to ignore. The world's most mysterious monetary experiment was about to be discussed before one of the world's most recognizable intelligence institutions. Imagine learning this if you were Satoshi Nakamoto. For years, Bitcoin had quietly grown beneath the radar, its users numbered in the hundreds, perhaps a few thousand. Suddenly, the attention of governments seemed inevitable. Not only journalists, not only investors, governments, regulators, law enforcement, intelligence agencies, the invention had crossed an invisible threshold. Detectives often describe moments like this as the point where a private matter becomes a public case. There is no turning back. The question naturally arises: did the CIA presentation frighten Satoshi? The historical evidence requires careful treatment. There is no known email in which Satoshi writes, "I am leaving because of the CIA." No document makes that direct claim. Responsible investigators must acknowledge that. Yet chronology can still be revealing. Within the same general period, Satoshi's public communication became increasingly rare. The tone subtly changed. Responsibility shifted toward other developers. The founder appeared less frequently. Then came April 2011, the farewell, one final email. Its wording remains remarkably restrained. No dramatic declarations, no accusations, no conspiracy theories, only calm recognition that Bitcoin had become something larger than its creator. In one of the last known exchanges, Satoshi encouraged others to stop portraying Bitcoin as a mysterious project centered around one individual and instead focus on its open source community and decentralized nature. Those words deserve careful attention. They reveal extraordinary self-awareness. Most inventors spend lifetimes protecting ownership, seeking recognition, defending legacy. Satoshi appeared determined to accomplish the opposite: erase the inventor, protect the invention. The distinction may explain everything. Imagine standing at the edge of history. You have created something capable of challenging existing assumptions about money. Governments have begun noticing. Financial institutions have begun noticing. Intelligence organizations have begun noticing. Every additional public appearance increases one risk. Bitcoin becomes identified with one person. If that person can be discredited, pressured, compromised, or simply removed, perhaps the project itself suffers, unless the creator disappears first. This possibility transforms Satoshi's silence from retreat into strategy. A detective must always ask, who benefits? If Satoshi vanished, Bitcoin lost its central authority, paradoxically, that strengthened its claim to decentralization. No founder remained to issue commands, no executive office existed, no charismatic leader could redefine the protocol according to personal preference. The software belonged to everyone, or perhaps to no one. This may have been the final lesson Satoshi intended to teach. A decentralized currency cannot permanently depend upon a centralized personality. Whether that reasoning actually motivated the disappearance remains uncertain, yet the logic is undeniably elegant. There is another astonishing aspect to this story. Despite years of investigation, despite unprecedented advances in digital forensics, despite the resources available to governments, corporations, journalists, and independent researchers, no verified digital trail has ever revealed Satoshi's real identity. Pause and appreciate how extraordinary that truly is. We inhabit an era in which smartphones continuously record location. Websites preserve browsing history, social media archives conversations, cloud services synchronize documents automatically. Modern life leaves digital footprints almost everywhere. Yet Satoshi appears to have avoided nearly every trap. No confirmed residential address, no verified telephone number, no authenticated photograph, no indisputable IP address, no bank account, no passport, no leaked employment record, nothing that has survived rigorous scrutiny. It resembles the perfect disappearance. Um, Detectives normally expect mistakes, a forgotten login, an accidental metadata leak, a reused username, an old registration record. Human beings are imperfect. Digital history is remarkably difficult to erase completely, yet the trail repeatedly dissolves. Either Satoshi possessed extraordinary operational security, or several individuals carefully protected one another's identities. Both explanations remain plausible. Both remain unproven. This is where mythology often begins replacing evidence. Some stories claim intelligence agencies secretly identified Satoshi years ago. Others insist governments actively protect the identity. Still others imagine elaborate witness protection scenarios. These narratives possess undeniable dramatic appeal. They possess far less verifiable evidence. Responsible investigation requires resisting seductive speculation. The truth is already remarkable without embellishment. An anonymous creator launched one of the world's most consequential technologies, communicated openly for more than 2 years, and then vanished without leaving a publicly verified identity. That alone ranks among history's most extraordinary disappearances. Perhaps even more fascinating than the disappearance itself is what never happened afterward. Satoshi never returned during Bitcoin's greatest crises. Not when exchanges collapsed, not when governments imposed restrictions, not during civil wars within the Bitcoin community, not when billions of dollars depended upon technical decisions. Most founders eventually reappear to defend reputation, to guide followers, to reclaim influence. Satoshi never did. Silence became permanent. That consistency may represent the strongest evidence of deliberate intention. Whatever motivated the withdrawal, it endured. Year after year, decade after decade. Some investigators compare Satoshi's disappearance to legendary unsolved vanishings. Others compare it to intelligence tradecraft. Still others see something almost philosophical. Perhaps the creator believed that true decentralization required personal disappearance. After all, could Bitcoin genuinely claim independence while everyone continued waiting for instructions from its inventor? Probably not. In that sense, the disappearance may have completed the invention. The protocol became self-governing precisely because its creator could no longer govern it. There is an almost paradoxical beauty in that outcome. The founder abandoned power to prove that power was unnecessary. Whether history will ultimately confirm this interpretation remains unknown, but it aligns remarkably well with Bitcoin's deepest principles. As detectives, we should also acknowledge another possibility. Perhaps the disappearance was not entirely voluntary. Life changes unexpectedly. Illness, family circumstances, professional obligations, personal danger, death. History offers countless reasons why correspondence suddenly ends. The absence of evidence prevents certainty, and certainty is something this investigation rarely grants. Yet, one fact stands above all others. April 2011 marked the final confirmed chapter of direct communication from Satoshi Nakamoto. Since then, millions of words have been written, thousands of theories proposed, hundreds of suspects investigated. Entire industries have emerged, governments have regulated Bitcoin, corporations have embraced it. Universities teach it, nations debate it. Still, the creator remains absent. Perhaps that absence is the final masterpiece, not the white paper, not the Genesis block, not even Bitcoin itself, but the decision to leave. To vanish so completely that the invention would forever stand apart from the inventor. Every detective secretly hopes that one final clue still exists. A forgotten hard drive, an unopened envelope, a cryptographic signature waiting to appear. Perhaps one day it will. Until then, the farewell email remains our final authentic conversation with the invisible architect. A brief message, a quiet exit, no dramatic goodbye, no promise to return. Only a gentle transfer of responsibility to a community that would carry Bitcoin into a future its creator would never publicly witness. Some disappearances end investigations. This one created a legend. Because the greatest trick Satoshi Nakamoto ever performed may not have been inventing Bitcoin. It may have been convincing the modern world that someone could create a financial revolution, change history forever, and then disappear so completely that even history itself could no longer find them. Chapter 9. Dorian Nakamoto, the Wrong Man. Every detective fears one particular mistake, not overlooking a clue, not misreading a fingerprint, not even accusing the wrong suspect in private. The greatest fear is pointing an entire world toward an innocent person, because once millions of eyes begin staring in the same direction, the truth becomes almost impossible to separate from the spectacle. In March 2014, the hunt for Satoshi Nakamoto took exactly that turn. For years, journalists had searched without success. Cryptographers debated obscure mailing lists, programmers analyzed forgotten source code, researchers compared writing styles and timestamps. Nothing produced a definitive answer. Then, almost overnight, everything appeared to change. A major magazine published a story with an explosive conclusion. According to its investigation, the creator of Bitcoin had finally been found. His name was Dorian Nakamoto. At first glance, the coincidence seemed irresistible. His full birth name included Satoshi Nakamoto. He was Japanese American. He possessed an engineering background. He had worked on technical projects throughout his career. For headline writers, it looked almost perfect. The world's greatest digital mystery, apparently solved by following a name that had been hiding in plain sight all along. But detectives know that coincidences can become dangerous when they are mistaken for proof. The article spread around the globe with astonishing speed. Television stations interrupted programming. Financial newspapers repeated the claim. Websites copied one another's headlines. Social media erupted. Within hours, the quiet life of an elderly man in California had vanished forever. Imagine waking one ordinary morning. You expect nothing unusual. Perhaps breakfast, perhaps reading the newspaper, perhaps another peaceful day spent pursuing familiar hobbies. Then the doorbell rings. Again and again. Cars begin parking outside your home. Strangers gather on the sidewalk. Cameras appear. Microphones emerge. Someone shouts questions through your front yard. You have become the center of an international media storm, without warning, without preparation, without understanding why. That was the reality confronting Dorian Nakamoto. Neighbors watched in disbelief. Television helicopters circled overhead. Satellite trucks crowded nearby streets. Reporters from around the world competed for interviews. Some waited outside his house for hours. Others followed him through public streets. Every movement became news. The scene resembled the pursuit of a fugitive, except the man at the center of the story insisted he had no idea what everyone was talking about. History often remembers headlines. It rarely remembers confusion. According to multiple interviews from that period, Dorian appeared genuinely bewildered by the attention. He denied creating Bitcoin. He denied being the mysterious programmer. At various moments, he indicated that he had misunderstood some earlier questions posed to him by journalists, contributing to the growing confusion. Most remarkably, he seemed unfamiliar with Bitcoin itself. Imagine that irony. The man presented to the world as the inventor of a revolutionary digital currency appeared unable to explain the technology. To many observers, this contradiction immediately raised doubts. Experienced cryptographers became skeptical. Longtime Bitcoin developers expressed caution. The technical evidence remained absent. Only circumstantial similarities connected Dorian to the identity of Satoshi, a shared name, an engineering background, little more. Yet once a public narrative gains momentum, correcting it becomes extraordinarily difficult. For Dorian, the consequences were deeply personal. He was not a billionaire living behind private security. He was not a celebrity accustomed to relentless publicity. He was an elderly man living a relatively modest life. Friends described him as quiet, reserved, interested in engineering and model trains. A man whose greatest ambition certainly had not been becoming the unwilling protagonist of a global technological mystery. The contrast was heartbreaking. One of the world's largest financial stories had collided with one ordinary citizen. Neither had been prepared for the encounter. As investigators, we must ask a difficult question. How could this happen? The answer reveals something uncomfortable about modern information. Spectacular stories travel faster than careful verification. A compelling coincidence often receives more attention than cautious uncertainty. The mystery itself became irresistible. A man named Satoshi Nakamoto existed. Bitcoin's creator called himself Satoshi Nakamoto. The temptation to connect those facts proved almost overwhelming. Yet genuine investigations require more than temptation. They require evidence. Meanwhile, the real mystery watched from the shadows. Then, something extraordinary happened, one event so unexpected that it immediately entered Bitcoin folklore. For years, the online account believed to belong to Satoshi Nakamoto had remained silent. No messages, no comments, nothing. The creator had disappeared. Then suddenly, the silence broke. A single post appeared. Only one sentence. Calm, direct, unmistakable. I am not Dorian Nakamoto. Nothing more. No explanation, no additional clues, no revelation of identity. Only a brief statement rejecting the accusation. If authentic, those 5 words changed everything. Imagine the scene from a detective's perspective. The anonymous suspect, silent for years, briefly steps out of the darkness, not to reveal themselves, not to claim credit, only to protect an innocent stranger. Then they vanish again. It is one of the most remarkable episodes in the entire Satoshi investigation. Naturally, questions immediately followed. Was the message genuinely written by Satoshi? Could the account itself have been compromised? Researchers debated both possibilities. Some accepted the statement as authentic, others urged caution. Even today, absolute certainty remains elusive. Yet regardless of authorship, the message profoundly influenced public perception. The narrative surrounding Dorian began collapsing. Attention gradually shifted elsewhere. The world's cameras eventually departed. Normal life, however, never fully returned. Once a person's name becomes permanently linked to one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries, complete anonymity becomes impossible. The internet rarely forgets. This raises another fascinating question. If the message truly came from Satoshi, why intervene? Why emerge from years of silence only to defend someone else? Several possibilities present themselves. Perhaps compassion. An innocent individual had become collateral damage in an increasingly obsessive investigation. Perhaps responsibility. The pseudonym chosen years earlier had unexpectedly entangled a real human being. Correcting the mistake became a moral obligation. Or perhaps something even subtler. Perhaps Satoshi understood that allowing false identifications to flourish would ultimately damage Bitcoin itself. A decentralized system built upon verifiable truth should not permit obvious falsehoods to become accepted history. Whatever the motivation, the intervention remains uniquely revealing. It demonstrated restraint, no self-congratulation, no elaborate explanation, only enough information to redirect attention away from the wrong person. Then silence resumed. For detectives, this behavior feels strangely consistent. Throughout every confirmed communication, Satoshi rarely appeared interested in personal recognition. The invention mattered. The inventor did not. The Dorian incident reinforces that pattern. Another aspect deserves careful reflection. The episode exposed a profound weakness within modern media culture. Journalistic investigations play an essential role in democratic societies. They uncover corruption, reveal hidden truths, hold powerful institutions accountable. Yet the search for truth also demands extraordinary caution when individual lives stand at stake. The Dorian case became a reminder that unsolved mysteries can tempt even experienced investigators toward premature conclusions. Coincidence is not proof. Similarity is not identity. Names alone solve nothing. There is another irony hidden inside this story. For a brief period, millions believed they had finally solved the Satoshi mystery. Instead, the mystery became even deeper. Because if Dorian was not Satoshi, then who remained? The suspect list narrowed, then widened again. Every eliminated candidate increased fascination with those still remaining. As detectives, we often learn more from false leads than successful ones. False leads reveal assumptions, biases, blind spots. The Dorian investigation revealed all 3. People expected genius to hide behind an ordinary face. They expected mystery to resolve through coincidence. Reality proved more elusive. Perhaps that lesson applies to our entire investigation. Maybe the answer will never emerge through obvious clues. Perhaps the truth has always been hidden somewhere less dramatic. Inside forgotten emails, obscure technical decisions, tiny linguistic habits, or private knowledge shared among a handful of cryptographers who have never spoken publicly. The Dorian chapter therefore occupies a unique place in the history of Bitcoin. It is not the story of discovering Satoshi Nakamoto. It is the story of discovering how desperately the world wanted the mystery to end. So desperately that it briefly convinced itself the answer had already arrived. History eventually corrected the mistake, but not before reminding us that every investigation carries ethical responsibilities alongside intellectual curiosity. Behind every theory stands a human being. Behind every headline stands a life capable of being changed forever. As we close Dorian Nakamoto's case file, one conclusion becomes unavoidable. The greatest mystery of the 21st century did not claim only anonymous programmers and cryptographers. It also reached into the life of an ordinary retired engineer whose only connection to Bitcoin may have been sharing the most famous name in modern technology. And somewhere beyond the television cameras, beyond the crowded sidewalks, beyond the headlines and speculation, the real Satoshi Nakamoto remained exactly where they had always been, hidden, watching, or perhaps gone forever, leaving behind only one brief sentence that reminded the world of an investigator's oldest obligation: never confuse the nearest answer with the correct one. Chapter 10. The Intelligence Agency Theory, NSA, CIA, or something else. Every unsolved mystery eventually enters dangerous territory. The evidence grows thinner, the imagination grows louder, questions begin multiplying faster than answers, and somewhere along the way, conspiracy theories arrive. Some deserve careful examination, others collapse the moment they encounter evidence. The detective's responsibility is neither to embrace extraordinary claims nor to dismiss them out of hand. It is to ask one simple question: does the evidence support the theory? No theory surrounding Bitcoin has captured the public imagination more powerfully than this one. What if Satoshi Nakamoto was never an independent programmer? What if Bitcoin originated inside an intelligence agency, or an organized secret network, or a hidden coalition of governments and technology companies? The theory sounds like a Hollywood screenplay, yet it refuses to disappear, because it begins with one undeniable observation. Bitcoin was astonishingly sophisticated from the very beginning. When Satoshi released version 0.1 of the software in January 2009, the code was not perfect. Like every major software project, it contained bugs that were later corrected. Some functions were unfinished. Some optimizations came years later. Security improvements continued to evolve. In that sense, Bitcoin was unmistakably the work of human developers. Yet something about the architecture impressed nearly everyone who examined it. The components fit together with unusual elegance: cryptography, distributed networking, game theory, economic incentives, timestamping, proof of work, digital signatures, difficulty adjustment. Every mechanism reinforced another. Nothing appeared arbitrary. It resembled less a collection of features and more a carefully balanced ecosystem. Many veteran programmers reached the same conclusion. Whoever designed Bitcoin possessed extraordinary breadth of knowledge. That observation is entirely reasonable. The question is what follows from it. Some enthusiasts jump immediately toward a dramatic conclusion. No single programmer could have done this. Therefore, a government must have built it. Detectives call this a logical leap. An impressive achievement does not automatically require a hidden organization. History contains many examples of extraordinary individuals producing revolutionary work, yet the opposite is equally true. Some innovations genuinely emerge from teams. The challenge lies in distinguishing possibility from probability. This is where the intelligence agency theory begins. Among the organizations most frequently mentioned stands the National Security Agency, or NSA. At first glance, the connection appears almost inevitable. The NSA employs some of the world's finest mathematicians and cryptographers. Its mission includes protecting American communications while analyzing encrypted information. If any institution possessed the expertise to create Bitcoin, the NSA certainly possessed the technical capability. Supporters of the theory point toward another historical curiosity. Years before Bitcoin appeared, researchers associated with the NSA had published work discussing cryptographic principles relevant to digital currencies. Some concepts later echoed within Bitcoin's design. Does that prove institutional authorship? No. It demonstrates something far less dramatic. Advanced cryptographic research already existed, ideas circulated, academic papers were published. Knowledge evolved. Bitcoin did not emerge from an intellectual vacuum. Still, the theory continued growing. Another branch involved the Central Intelligence Agency. Unlike the NSA, whose public identity centers upon signals intelligence and cryptography, the CIA became associated with Bitcoin primarily because governments often study technologies capable of influencing geopolitics. Could intelligence services have anticipated that decentralized digital money might reshape global finance? Almost certainly. Could they have secretly invented it? That question remains far more difficult. There is no publicly verified evidence demonstrating CIA authorship of Bitcoin. No leaked operational documents, no authenticated project files, no credible whistleblower testimony establishing such a program. The absence of evidence does not automatically disprove the possibility, but detectives cannot substitute speculation for proof. Then the theories become even stranger. Some enthusiasts search for hidden meanings inside the name itself. Satoshi Nakamoto. They divide it into fragments, combine syllables, compare abbreviations, attempt to connect the pseudonym with technology companies, research laboratories, or classified government projects. Entire books have been written interpreting the name as an elaborate acronym. Others insist it encodes references to corporations whose initials somehow combine to reveal Bitcoin's true creators. These interpretations possess undeniable creativity, yet they share one recurring weakness. Almost any sufficiently mysterious name can be rearranged until patterns appear. Human beings excel at discovering connections. Sometimes, we discover connections that genuinely exist. Sometimes, our brains create them. Psychologists call this pattern recognition. It is one of humanity's greatest strengths. It is also one of our greatest sources of error. Then comes perhaps the darkest version of the conspiracy. According to one popular narrative, Bitcoin was intentionally created as a giant financial trap, a digital reservoir capable of attracting enormous quantities of private wealth before governments eventually asserted complete control, a kind of invisible vacuum cleaner for global capital. The theory possesses dramatic appeal. Imagine billions of dollars voluntarily flowing into a system secretly monitored by its creators, an extraordinary intelligence operation, a financial spider's web spanning the planet. But detectives must again ask the essential question. Where is the evidence? Beyond speculation, very little appears. The blockchain itself remains open for inspection. Its source code has been analyzed by thousands of independent programmers across the globe. Researchers continuously examine vulnerabilities. Governments study it. Universities teach it. If hidden mechanisms designed to grant secret control existed, one might reasonably expect compelling technical evidence to emerge after so many years. Instead, the protocol continues operating according to publicly visible rules. That observation leads us toward perhaps the strongest counter-argument against nearly every government authorship theory. Consider Bitcoin's fundamental philosophy. Its monetary supply cannot be expanded through political decree. Its transactions occur without central approval. Its consensus emerges from distributed participants rather than state institutions. Most importantly, Bitcoin directly challenges one of the oldest powers exercised by sovereign governments: control over money. For centuries, issuing currency has remained among the defining characteristics of state authority. Central banks influence interest rates, manage monetary supply, respond to economic crises. Governments rarely surrender such powers voluntarily. Bitcoin proposes an alternative: money governed primarily by transparent protocol rather than discretionary policy. Whether one views this as beneficial or dangerous, it unquestionably reduces traditional monetary control. Here lies the detective's paradox. If a government secretly designed Bitcoin, why construct a system capable of limiting one of its own most significant institutional powers? Why spend extraordinary resources creating technology that critics frequently describe as competing with conventional monetary authority? Supporters of the conspiracy offer several responses. Perhaps governments desired greater financial surveillance. Perhaps they underestimated Bitcoin's future influence. Perhaps competing agencies pursued different objectives. These explanations remain theoretically possible, yet each introduces additional assumptions unsupported by direct evidence. Good investigations generally favor explanations requiring fewer unsupported assumptions. There is another detail worth considering. Governments around the world have displayed remarkably different attitudes toward Bitcoin. Some embraced regulatory frameworks, others attempted restrictions. Still others experimented cautiously while remaining skeptical. Such diversity appears difficult to reconcile with the notion of one coordinated secret operation guiding global policy. Again, not impossible, merely difficult. As detectives, we must distinguish technical capability from historical likelihood. Could intelligence agencies have created Bitcoin? Technically, perhaps. Did they? The publicly available evidence has not demonstrated that conclusion. This distinction matters enormously. Extraordinary capability does not constitute extraordinary proof. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the intelligence agency theory lies elsewhere. It reveals something about Bitcoin itself. People struggle to believe one anonymous individual or one small collaboration could produce something so influential. The invention feels too significant, too carefully designed, too historically consequential. Our instincts search instinctively for institutions large enough to match its impact. Sometimes history rewards those instincts. Sometimes history surprises us. The Wright brothers built the first successful airplane without being a government ministry. Tim Berners-Lee proposed the World Wide Web without directing a global intelligence alliance. Remarkable innovations occasionally emerge from remarkably small groups. Bitcoin may belong within that tradition, or perhaps not. The investigation remains open. One lesson, however, grows clearer with every chapter. The deeper we travel into the Satoshi mystery, the easier it becomes to mistake possibility for evidence. Every compelling theory deserves examination. None deserves unquestioning belief. That discipline separates investigation from mythology. As we close this chapter, the intelligence agency hypothesis remains one of the most captivating possibilities surrounding Bitcoin's origin. It asks profound questions about power, technology, money, and secrecy. Yet it also reminds us that the most satisfying explanation is not always the correct one. Sometimes the truth is astonishingly complicated. Sometimes it is astonishingly simple. And sometimes the greatest mystery of all is discovering how little evidence is required for the human imagination to build an entire hidden world. Whether Satoshi Nakamoto was one brilliant programmer, a small circle of collaborators, or something history has yet to uncover, the evidence still points toward the same conclusion. The identity remains hidden. The code remains open. The network continues running. And the greatest detective story of the digital age remains unsolved, not because theories are lacking, but because proof still refuses to reveal itself. Chapter 11. The Perfection of the Anonymous Legend. Every investigation begins with the same promise. Somewhere there is an answer. A hidden document, a forgotten witness, a final confession, a single piece of evidence waiting to transform uncertainty into certainty. For 10 chapters, we have followed every promising trail. We walked through the ruins of the 2008 financial crisis. We entered the hidden world of the cypherpunks. We reconstructed the birth of Bitcoin from 9 extraordinary pages. We examined Hal Finney, Nick Szabo, Adam Back, Craig Wright, Dorian Nakamoto. We explored intelligence agency theories, linguistic fingerprints, forgotten emails, cryptographic puzzles, and historical coincidences. Again and again, the clues seemed to converge. Again and again, they dissolved. Now we arrive at the final question. Not, who is Satoshi Nakamoto, but something far more profound. Does the mystery itself serve a purpose? Perhaps the greatest mistake made by investigators is assuming that every mystery exists because someone failed to solve it. Sometimes the mystery exists because someone designed it that way. Imagine Bitcoin without anonymity. Imagine that on January 3rd, 2009, the Genesis block had been accompanied by a press conference, a smiling inventor standing before cameras, business cards, interviews, television appearances, a verified passport, a legal identity. The world would have celebrated. Newspapers would have printed biographies. Universities would have invited lectures. Governments would have opened files. Banks would have investigated every detail of the inventor's life. Bitcoin's history would have become inseparable from one human being. That sounds harmless, perhaps even desirable, until we consider the consequences. Every decentralized system faces a paradox. How can something belong to everyone if one individual always stands above it? Imagine a disagreement inside the Bitcoin community, a technical dispute, a software update, a security emergency. Suppose the inventor remained alive, visible, and respected. What would everyone ask? What does Satoshi think? One sentence from the founder could influence markets, developers, investors, governments. The creator's opinion would become authority. Authority would become hierarchy. Hierarchy would weaken decentralization. Bitcoin might still function technically. Philosophically, it would already have changed. This is why detectives sometimes discover that the missing person is also the final piece of the design. Satoshi's disappearance did not leave Bitcoin unfinished. It completed it. Without a permanent founder, there could be no permanent ruler, no king, no chief executive, no supreme interpreter of the protocol, only consensus, only mathematics, only code accepted voluntarily by its participants. In hindsight, that may have been the most revolutionary decision of all. History offers revealing comparisons. Nearly every transformative movement became inseparable from its leader. Religions remember prophets. Political revolutions remember generals. Scientific theories remember famous names. Technology remembers founders. The inventor often becomes larger than the invention. Satoshi reversed that pattern. The invention consumed the inventor, and history has been trying to reverse that decision ever since. Now, consider another possibility. Suppose Satoshi suddenly appeared tomorrow. Imagine cryptographic proof beyond dispute. A message signed with the Genesis block's private keys. No room for doubt. No debate. The creator has returned. What happens next? Many people imagine celebration, television interviews, award ceremonies, history books finally corrected. Perhaps, but detectives rarely stop at the first consequence. They ask about the second and the third, the fourth, the fifth. Almost immediately, financial markets would react violently. Every sentence spoken by Satoshi would become global news. Entire investment strategies would change based upon a single interview. Governments would demand explanations. Tax authorities would ask questions. Law enforcement agencies across multiple jurisdictions would seek cooperation. Intelligence organizations would undoubtedly attempt to understand the individual whose invention had reshaped modern finance. The pressure would become unimaginable. Then comes another reality: the fortune. Researchers have long estimated that wallets widely believed to belong to Satoshi contain approximately 1 million Bitcoin, although the precise amount and ownership remain matters of analysis rather than certainty. Whatever the exact figure, the value represents one of the largest personal fortunes ever associated with a single pseudonymous creator. Such wealth transforms anonymity from convenience into survival. History teaches difficult lessons. People have been kidnapped for far less, extorted for far less, murdered for far less. Detectives understand something ordinary citizens often prefer to forget. Extraordinary wealth attracts extraordinary danger. Would the safest person on earth be the anonymous owner of one of history's greatest fortunes, or the publicly identified owner? The answer requires little imagination. Even if physical danger never materialized, another threat would emerge: political capture. Every government would seek endorsement. Every corporation would seek partnership. Every cryptocurrency project would seek legitimacy. Every ideological movement would quote the inventor whenever convenient. Soon, Bitcoin itself might become secondary. The founder would become the story. The protocol would compete with personality. Perhaps that is precisely what Satoshi wished to prevent. Notice something remarkable. Throughout confirmed communications, Satoshi almost never spoke like a revolutionary demanding followers. There were no manifestos calling for personal loyalty, no cult of personality, no emotional appeals. The writing remained technical, measured, curiously modest, almost reluctant to occupy the spotlight. This restraint feels increasingly significant. Perhaps anonymity was never merely protection. Perhaps it was philosophy. There is a beautiful irony hidden within Bitcoin. The system asks participants not to trust people. It asks them to verify mathematics. Would it not be contradictory if the creator then demanded personal trust? Instead, Satoshi disappeared, leaving behind no authority except the protocol itself. In doing so, the inventor obeyed the very principles embedded inside the invention. Trust the system, not the individual. This may explain why every investigation ultimately reaches the same invisible wall. We search for Satoshi because human beings naturally seek heroes. Stories feel incomplete without faces. Civilizations remember names more easily than ideas. Yet Bitcoin quietly resists that instinct. It insists that systems matter more than personalities. Consensus matters more than charisma. Rules matter more than rulers. As detectives, we should ask whether this mystery has already answered itself. Suppose tomorrow someone presented undeniable proof of Satoshi's identity. Would Bitcoin suddenly become more secure? No. Would its cryptography improve? No. Would its monetary policy change? No. Would the blockchain rewrite its history? No. The network would continue producing blocks exactly as before. Machines would keep verifying signatures. Nodes would keep reaching consensus. Life inside Bitcoin would proceed almost unchanged. The greatest mystery of the 21st century might ultimately prove irrelevant to the functioning of the invention itself. That realization feels almost unsettling. Our investigation sought a person. The invention never required one. Perhaps that is the final clue. The absence of Satoshi is not an unsolved bug. It is one of Bitcoin's strongest design features. There is one final sacrifice worth contemplating. Whether Satoshi was one individual or several collaborators, someone made an extraordinary decision. They surrendered the greatest prize history could offer: recognition, immortality through fame, a fortune that, if the commonly attributed wallets are indeed theirs, would rank among the largest in modern history. Few human beings voluntarily abandon both glory and immense wealth. Those who do usually believe they are protecting something larger than themselves. Was that truly Satoshi's motivation? We cannot know. No farewell confession survives. No autobiography exists, only silence. Yet silence itself can communicate, sometimes more powerfully than words. Every year that passes strengthens the legend, not because mystery grows fashionable, but because anonymity continues proving surprisingly durable in an age where almost nothing remains hidden forever. The invisible architect has become part of Bitcoin's architecture. Remove one, and the other would inevitably change. As detectives, we often dream of closing every case, writing the final report, filing the last document, declaring certainty. This investigation refuses such endings. Perhaps it always will, and perhaps that is fitting, because the greatest creation of Satoshi Nakamoto may not have been a digital currency. It may have been an idea. That true decentralization requires more than decentralized computers, more than decentralized money. It may also require the ultimate act of personal restraint, the willingness to disappear so completely that no one, not governments, not corporations, not investors, not historians, could ever place the weight of an entire revolution upon a single pair of shoulders. In the end, Bitcoin did not need a hero. It needed an absence. And somewhere beyond every theory, every suspect, every headline, and every unanswered question, the anonymous legend continues to perform its greatest miracle, not by revealing who Satoshi Nakamoto is, but by ensuring that, after all these years, Bitcoin no longer needs anyone to know. Chapter 12. The world that Satoshi changed. Every investigation eventually reaches its final page. The evidence has been examined, the suspects questioned, the theories tested. Some mysteries end with an arrest, others conclude with a confession. But the greatest mysteries leave us with something more valuable than certainty. They leave us with understanding. As we close this investigation into the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto, something remarkable has happened. The question that first brought us here has quietly transformed. At the beginning of this journey, we wanted to know who created Bitcoin. Now, perhaps a more important question stands before us. What has Bitcoin created? To answer that, we must return to one of the most ordinary purchases in financial history, or perhaps one of the most extraordinary, May 22nd, 2010. A programmer named Laszlo Hanyecz posted a simple offer online. He would pay 10,000 Bitcoin to anyone willing to order him 2 pizzas. No luxury cars, no private islands, no billion-dollar investment funds, just 2 ordinary pizzas. Someone accepted. The transaction was completed. The meal was delivered. History quietly changed direction. At the time, few people considered the event remarkable. Bitcoin had almost no established market value. The coins were difficult to obtain, but even more difficult to spend. Most observers saw little more than an amusing experiment. Yet detectives know that history rarely announces itself while it is happening. Only afterward do ordinary moments become legendary. Today, those same 10,000 Bitcoin represent one of the most famous purchases ever recorded. The pizzas have become symbols, not of extravagance, but of possibility. They proved something priceless. Bitcoin could function as money between two strangers without requiring a bank, a payment company, or a government intermediary. It was no longer merely an elegant idea inside a 9-page white paper. It had entered the real world. From that modest beginning, Bitcoin traveled a path almost impossible to imagine. Small online communities became global networks, volunteer programmers became multinational companies, academic debates became parliamentary hearings. An experimental digital currency became an asset followed by central banks, economists, investment firms, and policymakers across the globe. For years, critics insisted Bitcoin would disappear. It survived. They predicted governments would ignore it. Governments studied it. They predicted financial institutions would reject it. Many institutions eventually developed products and services connected to it, while others continued to approach it cautiously. Today, Bitcoin occupies a place few could have predicted during those lonely days of 2009. Institutional investors monitor it. Public companies have chosen to hold it on their balance sheets. Major financial firms offer products linked to it in jurisdictions where regulators have approved them. What once lived on obscure cryptography mailing lists now appears on the same market screens that display gold, oil, government bonds, and stock indexes. Wall Street did not merely notice Bitcoin, it had to respond to it. That transformation is astonishing. The detective inside us cannot help asking, did Satoshi anticipate any of this? Did the anonymous architect imagine that presidents would discuss Bitcoin, that universities would teach courses devoted to blockchain technology, that governments would spend years debating how to regulate decentralized digital assets? Perhaps. Perhaps not. Some inventions exceed even their creators' expectations. History is full of such surprises, yet Bitcoin's journey is far from complete. In many ways, its most significant chapter may still lie ahead. Around the world, governments are exploring or developing central bank digital currencies, often known as CBDCs. At first glance, they may appear similar to cryptocurrencies. They exist digitally, they can move electronically, they promise faster payment systems. But beneath those similarities lies a profound philosophical difference. Bitcoin was designed to operate without a central authority controlling issuance or validating every decision. A CBDC, by definition, is issued and managed by a central bank. One model emphasizes decentralized consensus. The other is built upon centralized monetary authority. This distinction should not automatically be interpreted as a battle between good and evil. Supporters of CBDCs argue they could improve payment efficiency, strengthen financial infrastructure, expand access to digital payments, and enhance the implementation of monetary policy. Supporters of Bitcoin emphasize censorship resistance, predictable monetary issuance, transparency of the protocol, and reduced dependence on centralized institutions. These are fundamentally different visions of how digital money might function. The future may contain elements of both, or it may evolve into something neither side fully anticipates today. Our investigation therefore expands beyond one anonymous programmer. It becomes an investigation into competing ideas about trust. Should trust primarily rest in institutions or in open mathematical systems? Should money remain governed through centralized policy decisions or through transparent rules embedded in publicly auditable software? These questions will likely shape economic debates for decades. Regardless of where history ultimately leads, one fact remains undeniable. Bitcoin permanently changed the global conversation. Before Bitcoin, decentralized digital scarcity existed largely as theory. After Bitcoin, it became reality. Whether admired or criticized, embraced or rejected, Bitcoin forced economists, programmers, governments, and citizens to reconsider assumptions that had remained largely unquestioned for generations. Perhaps that is Satoshi's greatest achievement. Not creating universal agreement, creating unavoidable conversation. Throughout this investigation, we searched relentlessly for one face, one biography, one definitive answer. Instead, we discovered something unexpected. Bitcoin's strength does not depend upon knowing its creator. Every block added to the blockchain reinforces that lesson. The network continues, the code evolves, developers come and go, miners appear and disappear, companies rise and fall, markets celebrate, markets panic. Yet the protocol continues, measuring time one block after another, patiently, indifferently, almost as though the inventor truly succeeded in creating something capable of existing beyond its creator. Few human inventions achieve that. Most remain forever attached to the personalities who conceived them. Bitcoin gradually detached itself from its origin, perhaps deliberately, perhaps inevitably. As detectives, we often imagine the perfect ending as the moment when every question receives an answer. Life rarely grants such endings. Sometimes the highest form of understanding is recognizing which questions matter and which questions no longer do. Yes, it would be fascinating to learn Satoshi Nakamoto's true identity. Perhaps one day, an authentic cryptographic signature will finally appear. Perhaps forgotten documents will emerge. Perhaps history still guards one final surprise. If that day comes, the world will undoubtedly pause. But even then, Bitcoin will continue producing blocks. The mathematics will remain unchanged. The network will not suddenly become more decentralized or less decentralized because a name enters a history book. That realization may be the quiet solution to our entire investigation. Satoshi's greatest success was never remaining anonymous. It was ensuring that anonymity became unnecessary for Bitcoin's survival. And so, as we reach the end of this journey, allow yourself one final thought. Perhaps Satoshi Nakamoto was not trying to become history's greatest mystery. Perhaps they were trying to make themselves irrelevant, to create an idea strong enough to survive without its creator, to build a system that trusted principles instead of personalities, to leave behind a revolution that belonged equally to everyone and to no one. There is something deeply beautiful about that possibility, because in a world increasingly shaped by algorithms, surveillance, artificial intelligence, and digital identity, Bitcoin continues asking an ancient question: who deserves our trust? The answer has never been simple. Perhaps it never will be. But somewhere in the silence left behind by the anonymous architect, millions of people continue exploring that question every single day. And maybe that is the real legacy of Satoshi Nakamoto. Not a fortune, not a white paper, not even Bitcoin itself, but the courage to imagine that transparency can sometimes matter more than authority, that open rules can sometimes matter more than powerful rulers, and that ideas, once released into the world, can become stronger than the people who first imagined them. In the end, perhaps Satoshi does not need a face. Perhaps Satoshi never needed one. Because every developer who contributes openly, every researcher who questions accepted assumptions, every citizen who believes that truth should be verifiable rather than merely asserted, carries forward a small part of the same vision. Not because they are Satoshi Nakamoto, but because they share the belief that trust is strongest when it does not depend upon a single human being. The greatest detective story of the 21st century remains unsolved, and perhaps it should remain that way, because some mysteries are not obstacles to history. They are the very reason history remembers. Thank you for joining this journey through one of the greatest mysteries of the digital age. If you enjoyed this audiobook and would like to support the channel, please consider liking this episode, subscribing for future science and history podcasts, and sharing it with someone who loves technology, cryptography, or unsolved mysteries. Most importantly, we'd love to hear from you. Who do you believe Satoshi Nakamoto really is? Or perhaps you think the mystery is more important than the answer. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if there's another historical mystery, scientific puzzle, or hidden story you'd like us to explore in a future podcast or audiobook, let us know. Your suggestion might become our next investigation. Until next time, keep asking difficult questions, keep following the evidence, and never stop being curious.